In 1620, the King of Sweden, Gustavus II Adolphus, decreed a drilling and grinding plant for musket barrels to be based in Husqvarna. Eventually, this factory grew into one of the most world-renowned factories that has ever been, and started making sewing machines around 1872. Today I present to you the first in the Colormatic series, arriving on the scene right around 1960. It's none other than the Viking Model 2000. The inception of the Colormatic concept, where they wanted to make it simple by simply lining up 3 knobs with the same color, you could launch into almost limitless cam-generated stitches. And Her Majesty's niece is here to help us present this fabulous machine today that belongs to my dear friend, Julie Butler. A 3rd-generation machine used originally by Julie's mother, now by her, and also by a granddaughter. Yeah, pretty cool, huh? Yeah! Well, that was kind of a mellow start. Let's mix it up a little bit now and have a little bit of fun, shall we? Yeah, let's do it. I think so. All right. Whoopah! I love it! Yes, I'll remember to ring the bell. Class is in its session! Hey, hey. Yes, I would be honored. Oh, you got a vertical thing? I didn't mean to make you dizzy. I'm so sorry, Your Majesty. All right, let me set you down. Ooh, that's a fancy light. Let's use the light on the machine instead. I replaced this with one of my LED bulbs, and boy, was Julie excited! All right, let's get some lights on. Lights on! All right. All right, let's get closer to the machine. Like we're way out. We're way out. Well, there's that royal crest. Again, the roots of this going back all the way to 1600. Singer and other companies will brag about coming on the scene, coming into their inception around the mid-1850s. Husqvarna is one of the few companies that can reach all the way back to the 1600s and say that was our birthplace. And we just waited a little while everyone else was figuring it out to decide to start making sewing machines around 1872. But you know what? They got bragging rights with their roots going all the way back to 1600s. Almost 200 years they were on the scene before any of the other companies even started to breathe their first breath of creativity and innovation. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. Yeah, it is. Let's walk around Julie's machine a little bit and I'll kind of show you the lay of the land. See that right there? That's going to help us drop the feed dogs if we want to do free motion quilting or other type of decorative, dainty type work. Right here we've got our stitch width controller, and you can see straight away It's easy, easy, easy to set this machine up to sew cam-generated stitches. We've got our little rainbow setting right there that we're going to be using quite a bit during this premiere today. And if we want to sew a straight stitch, all we do is set it on 0 like it is right now. Whoopah! Yeah, I love that song. I love it. This control right here is our stitch length. And you can see also there we've got rainbow setting options as well to select some of those cam features that this machine can sew. Also, our reverse button right here if we want to sew in reverse. Now this model 2000 being the earliest in the Colormatic series, again arriving on the scene right around 1960, it's not going to have a 2-stage reverse like some of the later E model series machines, 21E, 19E, etc. This is going to be a single stage, which means if you want to sew in reverse, guess what? You got to hold that sucker in. Yeah, you do. And then when you're done sewing in reverse, just release it and you'll start sewing forward again. Right over here, this knob is our stitch selector. And on this, we can have a default option where it's set right now, where we're going to be able to sew a zigzag, a straight stitch, and also do buttonholes. Just to the right of it, we've got a 3-point zigzag. And then beyond that, we can select any of our colors that relate to the stitches that we're going to be sewing. Now, if you're curious about the lighting system on this, I mentioned the LED bulb that I put in. When this machine came to the workshop, as you'll see in the progress shots that I put up on Facebook, this light assembly was being held up by tape. And Julie thought it was just a screw, but there were some other things going on as well. So I got that all repaired, and now when Julie wants to change the bulb or just show folks that cool LED bulb, she can pull it down and it's not going to fall down under the free arm. We don't want it to fall on the free arm, right? No, 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 no. And there's just a little toggle right underneath here to turn the light on and off. Quite nice, quite nice. Originally there was a switch on the rear of the machine on the back of the pillar, and as they started getting more and more progressive with their machines, they added this toggle underneath the arm of the machine, which is fabulous, isn't it? Today, because Julie sent it with the machine, I've got Cam C in the back of the machine. Let's see what kind of stitches we're going to be doing with Cam C. And there they are right there. What I'll refer to as a Christmas tree stitch on the right side, a snaky stitch in red, a sunburst in yellow, and finally, what most people would describe in blue as a floral type stitch. Kind of gives you a sense of being out in your garden or something like that. So that's way cool. So those are the 4 cam generated stitches we'll be sewing today. Yeah, very cool. My music was doing so well and it just cut out again. Someone at YouTube kicked the plug. What is that about? What is that about? Hold on a second. Let me see if I can get that music going again. I was enjoying that. Almost feels kind of like a Greek style music, doesn't it? All right, come on guys. Stop kicking the plug and let's get this done. All right, let's get it done. All right, there we go. Now I don't have to shout quite as loud, which will be nice. There we go. It was playing beautifully before we launched into this premiere. I was listening to some of this music, and what I selected for a keyword is dance. I felt dancey today. And I noticed my good friend over in the UK, Alex Askeroff, recently posted again about one of his books, and he goes, hey, guess what? If you peek into the kitchen, you're going to see me cutting the rug or doing the boogie. And I didn't know that Alex dances. Yeah, you know what I mean. But you know what? If he does dance, it's probably out of joy because of the wonderful woman he has Yana. If Yana probably makes him dance, I'm guessing. Or says, hey, Alex, show me your moves. And then he cuts into it. Yeah. So y'all check that out. I would love to see Alex dance. As a matter of fact, if he travels to the U.S. eventually, we're going to dance together. Alex, get ready for it, buddy. I'm going to crank on some music and we're going to cut a rug together. Yeah, we are. Oh, isn't it great to have friends around the world? Yes, it is. So let's look at the threading on this machine, shall we? And I'm going to come off the tripod to do that. Let's come off the tripod to do that. Yeah. Oh, I don't have all my lights on yet. Hold on a sec. Oh, there we go. That helps a bit. There we go. So on the threading on the Model 2000, it's pretty straightforward, I think. Start on the back over here, and you can see that we've got 2 spool pins, which right away tells you straight away that it has the capacity for twin needle or dual needle sewing. Also, you're going to be using this spool pin when you're winding a bobbin, which we will do during this premiere, so you can see that done as well. So we come away from that spool, we come through our first thread guide right back here. Kind of just bring the thread in from the side, come across the top of the machine, another thread guide here, down through here. And before I go any further, let me say this. You always make sure when you're threading any sewing machine, doesn't matter if it's a Swedish beauty like this or otherwise, you always make sure your take-up arm, which is this right here, excuse me, your presser foot lever. What am I saying, take-up arm? We'll get to that as well. That's part of the equation. So you always make sure your presser foot bar lever is in the up position. The reason you do that is it takes all of the pressure off of the discs so you can draw that thread deep in between those discs and make sure that you're getting even tension from the top. And again, the upper tension unit is going to do what? Type it in the chat. What does this manage as far as the stitch process? Go ahead and take a second and do that if you'd be so kind. Now, what I started to say while you're typing your answer in is I mentioned take-up arm. I always think about the take-up arm because that's so critical to launching. You always make sure that this take-up arm is at the highest position and just getting ready to do. If I just barely turn the balance wheel, you're going to see that it's beginning to go on the downstroke. See that? That's the perfect way to launch so you don't get any binding, you don't get any hesitation from the machine, and you don't get any bird nesting on the bottom, which can sometimes happen. If you step on your foot controller with this take-up arm at the lower position, what it's going to do is it's going to start to feed that thread from the raceway, and you'll start to get a little bit of a mess on the bottom of your material. You can avoid that by doing 2 things. You do it by making sure this is at the highest position, beginning to come on that downstroke, and then also sometimes it's wise and prudent just to give a brief little hold on the threads as you're beginning to launch. Just for about the first second. And then as that machine starts to stitch, you can release it and go on your happy way. Now, some machines are more sensitive to that, others are not. So what I began to say is you want to make sure that as you set this machine up to sew and you come through those discs and you've got your presser foot lever in the up position, you're drawing that thread through, that when you come around, you make your way around that take-up spring as well, right here. Okay? There's our take-up spring. You kind of come around that little edge tip right there, and you come over the spring, you come underneath this thread guide, you come all the way up to our take-up arm, which is at the highest position, you come through there, come back down through this thread guide, and then eventually through this thread guide, and then you're going to be threading this machine from front to back. Okay? Very, very important that the threading and the setup of the machine is done correctly. Now the bobbin case below, you can see it right there, and even at the launch of this first Colormatic series machine in 1960, they already had perfected what they refer to as the jam-free raceway. That means that as the machine is sewing, that hook system, as you can see me pushing on it gently, can go up and down. It can go right and left. And what that allows this machine to do is take much heavier threads without the challenge or the issue of that thread getting jammed in that hook system. Now, when you're setting up your bobbin, you're going to make sure that that thread is coming from underneath when you put it into the bobbin case. Okay, so if I were to remove this bobbin, which I'm doing as we speak, and if I were to set the camera down just temporarily and flip my screen so I can see what you're seeing and come out a little bit on the shot as well. Oh my gosh, I'm so busy. There's so many things to do. So you would see that when I set this up for sewing, what I generally do just for ease is I hold the bobbin case in my left hand, the bobbin in the right. When I slide it in, I'm going to slide it in right next to this little groove right there. See that little groove on the bobbin case? I'm going to slide it in, bring that thread through that little groove, and then I'm going to bring it all the way underneath that tension spring. And I do that by holding the bobbin and then drawing the thread through. You'll hear just a real subtle little click, and then it's all set to go. And as this is unwinding in the sewing process, it's going to be turning counterclockwise, if you can see that. We're going to go ahead and reinsert it again in the raceway. You'll hear just a little subtle click as you put it into position. It's back in the raceway again now. And then what we're going to do, and I'm going to go back up on the tripod so I can do that more easily, is we're going to be holding this thread back here as we rotate the balance wheel, which is this right here, slowly towards you. And that'll draw that thread up from the bobbin case so we can then pull it to the rear and begin our sewing process. So let's do that next, shall we? Let's do that next. So I'm going to kind of come right here to begin with. So once again, I'm just going to hold that thread in the rear just temporarily. I'm going to rotate the balance wheel towards me. And by the way, it does not matter. I've seen some posts online where people will say, only try to bring the thread up when you have your machine set on straight stitch. It doesn't matter. You could have it set on the most intricate decorative stitch and rotate that balance wheel, and that thread will come up straight away, because that's a hook timing factor. It has nothing to do with the stitch selector or what you have the stitch selector set on. I just happen to have it on a straight stitch right now. You'll see that little loop pop up, and then you can grab it with whatever and just draw that to the rear. And just make sure your threads are not entangled, as they sometimes can get when you're drawing that thread up. Kind of just make sure they're separate and free moving, and then go ahead and close your door and you're all set as far as that. Apart from, make sure that take-up arm automatically you rotate it to the highest position, so you're all set to launch into your first sew off. But before we sew off, part of the setup is also winding a bobbin. You've got to have a bobbin to put in that bobbin case that I just showed you. I had already done that in advance, but let's say we want to wind a bobbin. What do we do about that? Well, certainly your book will show you, but if you're not privileged to have a book on the machine that you're working with, it's always good to have a few tips, isn't it? So we're looking at the side of Julie's machine now. That again, this machine started with Julie's mother, excuse me. Started with Julie's mother, went to Julie, and now we have a granddaughter that wants to use this machine as well. But there were a number of issues going on, including a cracked cam stack and some other mechanical factors with the machine, which are all resolved and good to go now. But if we want to wind a bobbin, what do we do? What do we do? Well, the first thing we do is we dance, because this is totally dancing music. But I'll wait. I'll be good. I do have to turn it up a little bit, though. I just have to. So what we're looking at there is the bobbin winding mechanism. Yeah, we are. And that does a couple of things. One, it's going to, what the heck is that? I didn't know you were Greek. You guys know who this is. Type in the chat if you know this dude. Who he is, what he's about. You got some good moves, man. Especially considering you're wearing a duck. What's that about? Nice. Do a turn again, would you? Do a turn, and then let's get back to the machine. Tell you one thing, he's a snowbird, but he's got some moves. Yeah, he does. See you, buddy. Bye. Nice guy. What a nice guy he is. Yeah, he is. All right. So we're looking at the side of the machine again after our little dance party there. And this mechanism is going to do a couple of things. And let me tell you that when I service a machine, I service about 20 to 25 parts in this one mechanism alone, because it does so much. Number one, when we slide a bobbin on for bobbin winding, it's going to automatically disengage the clutch. So just by sliding that bobbin on that stem of the bobbin winder, I can step on the foot controller right now, and guess what? The machine needle is not going to move. But the bobbin winder is. You saw the needle's not moving. I'll step on it again and we'll kind of zoom in on that. Well, you couldn't see that the needle wasn't moving because I was too close. What the gravy? What's going on? Let's try that again. There, now you can see both. Yeah. So I've got that bobbin on, and it automatically disengages the clutch, so the needle won't move over here when that bobbin is in place. But the bobbin is spinning beautifully. You see that? Probably can even hear it a little bit when there's no music playing. So that's number one, what that mechanism does. Then beyond that, that mechanism is also going to give us the ability to do slow sewing. And we're not going to do that right now, but I'll show you how to engage it. Take our bobbin off, we'll pull this out, and by pulling that little ring out there, like so, it's going to take this machine from full speed all the way down to 1/5 speed. It does not increase the power of the machine. This Model 2000 from the 1960s is going to sew with 1 amp of power, which by the way is an optimized motor after I got done with it. But it's going to deliver 1 amp of power whether you have the slow gear engaged or not. It's going to reduce it like a 10-speed bike by gear ratio. So some try to argue, hey, it increases the power. It doesn't. What it does is it slows the machine down though, so it's able to have better launch and better traction when you're sewing heavy duty. So it kind of gives the impression you have more power, but you don't. And then as soon as you push this ring back in, like so, you'll hear a click, and that is the gear ratio changing back so that you're sewing at full speed again. So it gives you a huge amount of control, and I'll demonstrate that today during this premiere, where we're going to be sewing around some protected full grain leather that's cut out in kind of a weird shape, and it'll give me the ability to have a lot better control as I'm making those turns and corners, etc. Plus it'll just slow it down so I can see what's happening down at the needle a lot easier, which is wonderful. Back to bobbin winding. Oh, let me show you one other thing. Where you see a little bit of discoloration, which is permanent. Once oil kind of works its way into the micro level of the casing of a machine like this, unless you sand away at it, which you're going to lose part of the patina doing that, you're not going to be able to get rid of that discoloration completely. I kind of lightened it a little bit through the cleaning process, but it's still going to be there, and that's okay. But periodically, especially if you're doing a lot of bobbin winding, you're going to want to put 1 or 2 drops of regular machine oil in the hole that we're looking at right now, and it's going to lubricate that mechanism that does so much for the machine, okay? So don't forget to do that. Don't forget, don't forget. You also see those little holes just to the right of the bobbin winding assembly. Those are gonna allow air exchange for the motor to keep that motor running cool. Make sure you're periodically taking a Q-tip swab and you're cleaning each of those holes. I know it's meticulous, but it's necessary. And there's another similar access point for air on the other side of the engine cover. I had to say engine cover because it's a European cool way of saying motor. I like engine cover better. Yeah, I do. So finally, back to winding a bobbin. Let's turn this machine a little bit more, and I'll adjust the camera. So the first thing we have to do is we have to say, okay, what kind of thread are we going to use? Well, I figured that out already. I'm going to use some Gooderman 100% polyester thread just for winding this bobbin. And there's a thread guide right here that I'm going to zoom in on even more so we can look at it. And also show you that it goes in and out. In when you're not using it, out when you are using it. So you can thread it right here, or you can just pull it out like you're going to be using it for bobbin winding, all the way to that position, and then you can thread it. You kind of come, I always like to do it two hands, kind of come underneath and then pull it through. So we just pulled it through that hole. Kind of come underneath from the side like this and just kind of give it a little dipsy doodle and it'll be through there. Now we have to go on to the next thread guide, which also serves as a tensioner. So follow me down there. Aha! There it is. And on this one, we're going to kind of come underneath that little finger with the thread, like this, and then we're going to come around that tensioner. See what I did? I came underneath the finger, and I came around the back side of the tensioner, and I kind of pulled that thread through. So now we're going to get tension, and you see how the finger is orientated right now on that tensioner? It's kind of pointing to the front of the machine like, hey, what's up? That's the way it should be orientated. I've had some Swedish beauties that have come in and the finger is all the way to the back. It's pointing up, it's pointing all the way down. And the customer will say, I always have to battle that sucker when I'm trying to wind a bobbin. Well, that's because it's orientated wrong. You'll want to orientate it like you see it right there in the shot. And certain Swedish beauties, like some of the green machines, you've got to also loosen this and bring it out a little bit further. On the 2000, it's okay to have it almost touching the casing. On the other Swedish beauties, you might have to draw it out a little bit. Otherwise, when you're winding the bobbin, the thread will be concentrating on one side. It won't be evenly distributed across that bobbin. And that's an adjustment of bringing this out further. Okay, makes sense? If that makes sense, go ahead and type like a thumbs up, a smiley face, a dancing bear, whatever you want to put in the live chat. That would be totally cool, so I know we're on board with the same thing. So I'm going to put that bobbin back on straight away. Snap that into place, which you couldn't see me do because I had the shot wrong. So again, just it's off, and now it's on. Okay? Now we're going to give a couple wraps of thread onto the bobbin to give us a starting point, and then we'll hold on to that thread when we launch. But let me change my shot so we can see all of this kind of coming together a little bit more easily. There we go. That's a little bit better, I think. All right, now let's change this shot. Okay, so now I'm going to bring that thread around the bobbin, a couple winds. I think I don't count, but I probably end up doing it around 3 to 4 times or something like that. And we're not going to be using this 100% polyester on Julie's machine today. I just want to show this bobbin winding process. We're going to be using, because I received a note from someone, and it was not a nasty note, but it was a very let's get in your face type note. The person wrote, and their name is, that individual's name is Sandra, and she is from Canada. And she said, Scott, you're always bad-mouthing the Coats & Clark all-purpose thread. There's nothing wrong with this stuff. It works great. I use it for all kinds of sewing applications. Could you at least give it a try and stop bad-mouthing it and saying it's cheap low-end thread? Well, Sandra, it is cheap low-end thread, but I'm going to give it a go today anyway for these sew-offs and answer your call or answer your challenge. So our setup today is we're using Coats & Clark all-purpose thread, which is a much cheaper grade thread than, say, some of the more fancy Coats & Clark stuff like the trilobal stuff you've seen me use, the yellow thread multiple times. And it's much lower grade than a Gutermann thread as well. So I just have to be upfront about that. It's a more, let's just say it this way, it's a more thrifty thread than the other ones. So if you want to spend less money on thread, you can buy the Coats & Clark all-purpose thread for sewing machines and save some money. But we're going to put it to the test today and see how it does, okay? And then I can feel like I've answered that. The other note I got was from a Kevin, and it's not Kevin from Iowa, Kevin and Doreen. It was another Kevin all the way from the UK that said, Scott, you're always pushing the Schmetz needles. And now you got Alex Askeroff doing it over in the UK as well. Well, I think Alex and I both believed in these needles very early on. We might have influenced each other a bit, or at least affirmed each other a bit. But he said, could you try organ needles? And could you try a smaller needle than the 90 size you're always using? I said, sure. What do you recommend? He said, go ahead and try an organ size 80, which is going to be a size 12, I believe. And I said, sure, I'll give that a try. So today we're just totally mixing it up and keeping it real on Julie's Model 2000 that originated in 1960. We're sewing with an all-purpose, more thrifty thread by Coats & Clark, readily available at pretty much any place. And we're going to be using an organ needle instead of a Schmetz needle, and it's going to be smaller. It's going to be a size 80, which I think equates to a size 12, okay? So this will be a little bit nerve-wracking for me because I'm operating outside of my element. You know what I mean? Okay, I'm just babbling. Okay, so let me push on the foot controller. Let's get this thread a-winding, and I'm going to do it real slow so I don't end up wrapping around the inside or the outside or somewhere else. Okay, now I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to come off the tripod so you can watch this wind. And, you know, all I can say is that it's really essential. Oh, I don't even have to come off the tripod. Lovely. Okay, let's go right there then. And I'll just turn the machine just a tiny little bit more. We have the machine like upside down and right side up and all that kind of stuff. There we go. I think that should give you a good view of it. Well, the reason I'm wanting you to see this is when you have this machine set up properly, number one, you remember to extend that thread guide that you can't see. It's kind of like right behind the balance wheel. And when you have this thread guide and tensioner set up correctly, you're going to get a nice even distribution of that thread as it's going onto the bobbin. And it's so essential to have thread evenly distributed on a bobbin, otherwise you'll experience challenges when you're sewing. You might have the thread break, you might get like a mess of thread that all of a sudden spins out quickly, and it just creates all kinds of havoc for you. Avoid that by doing this setup properly. All right, so let me push on the foot controller again, and let's watch that thread do its thing. And I'm not going to wind it all the way, but I just want you to see that thread moving back and forth beautifully. Come up just a little bit, then you can see it really going. See that? Perfectly distributed from left to right, from right to left. And when that eventually goes into another Husqvarna bobbin case, it's just going to feed like a dream. It's going to feed like a dream. Isn't that lovely? Isn't it fun to watch? It's almost soothing. It's almost
bobbin therapy. Is that a thing? Type in the chat if you've ever heard of bobbin therapy. I didn't know that I have. So I'm going to stop there for now. Then go ahead and just remove your bobbin, give that thread a clip, and then you can set that bobbin to the side. You can set this bobbin to the side so you're all set to use it when the need arises. When you're looking for that polyester feel. Yeah. Now the next thing that will happen when we actually go back to the idea of using the machine for sewing, that's a crazy concept, isn't it? Is maybe not with the music playing, and I'll bring the music back down again, but you'll hear just a soft little click as we first push on the foot controller to launch into our first sew off. Nothing's wrong with the machine. That's simply that clutch re-engaging behind this little panel right here. That clutch is going to re-engage. When we put the bobbin on that bobbin winder, it depresses a little metal piece that's sticking up from the stem, and it uses a spring release to disengage the clutch. When we take that bobbin off, it releases that spring, and then as soon as we push on the foot controller, you'll hear a click, and then that clutch will be re-engaged, which means our balance wheel will start turning so we can actually use the machine for sewing. Who knew? Yeah, cool. The other thing in relation to setup that I should also show you real quick so that I don't forget to do it is I've shown you how to thread it. I've talked about the thread in the bobbin case, orientating that. I've talked about and showed you how to properly wind a bobbin so that you don't have issues with feed down in the raceway from there. We also have to look at the factor of presser foot pressure. So essential, so important. So let me turn the machine the opposite direction this time, if I can. But you know what? Yeah, I'll try it. I've got everything connected, so it might be a bit awkward. Let's give it a go. All right, let me adjust my shot. Not too bad. So you open up your face plates, first of all. And right over here, you're going to see the adjuster for presser foot pressure. There's a little dial. Little dial right here. And every machine has its nuances. As we're rotating this dial, the more you come forward, in other words, the more you turn this dial this direction, the more that presser foot pressure is going to be going up. So you turn the dial towards the front of the machine, you're going to increase the presser foot pressure. If you push it to the rear, you're going to see this dial slowly coming down further and further and further and further. It's going to be decreasing presser foot pressure. Now, if you all of a sudden decide you want no presser foot pressure, let's say that you're trying to get something incredibly thick underneath the presser foot and there's just not enough clearance. What you can do is you can hit the quick release, and the quick release is going to remove all presser foot pressure. And I want to come out on the shot so you can still see, but you can see the result of what happens when I do it. So let me do this first of all. I'll show you what you release, because that's kind of helpful, isn't it? You see that little piece right there that has the teeth on it right above the little knob that I was pointing out? When we push that in, it's going to release a mechanism so that all of a sudden that little dial we were turning will drop down suddenly, and that means there's no presser foot pressure whatsoever. So I'm going to push it right now while we're close up on it. First of all, I'll show you where the presser foot is right now. You can see it's in the raised position, ready to do its job. As soon as we push that, it's going to drop down. Once we find it again, it's going to drop down suddenly, and that tells us right away all of our presser foot pressure is gone. See that? See how it dropped down? And now look what happened to the presser foot. See that? It also dropped down as well. And it's not going to be all the way down because we have our presser foot lever up. But right now, if I were to come over by that presser foot attachment and lock the camera in place, yeah, that would help. Let's do that. Right about there. If I want to, when I have that presser foot pressure released, I can grab this presser foot bar right here and I can manipulate it up and down because there's no pressure on it right now. See that? So if this is my approximate limitation or clearance, then if I want to fit something real thick underneath there, I release the presser foot pressure, I raise this up temporarily, and I've got the equivalent clearance of probably about 5 or 6 quarters, US quarters, on top of each other. It's crazy clearance. And then as soon as I get my material in place, I release it, kind of let it rest on top of the material, but I don't have any pressure at this point, so don't start sewing. Don't do it. I love this song right now. I love this song. It's called it's called something. It's an Armenian dance song. I danced this as a little boy. Bum, bum, bum. And the leader that is holding basically the finger of the person behind him, it's a long string of people, and they have kind of like sometimes they interlock pinkies, sometimes they just hold hands, but they're holding a handkerchief and they're doing the havna. Look, let me look at the name. Hold on. Hava Nagila. Hava Nagila. I should have known that. I haven't done the dance for a real long time. Hava Nagila. And you know, there's Armenians that will dance to this song. There's Greeks. You know, we're all dancing together. We don't care. We don't care! But it's such a fun song to dance to. You got to do it. If you're ever at a Greek wedding and at an Armenian wedding, they're going to do this song. Get out there. Get off your bottom and join that line of people and dance. Oh my gosh, it's so much fun. Okay, all right, I'm rambling. I know. So how do we re-engage presser foot pressure again? We need that, right? It's kind of important. Yeah! Mr. Bean dances this every time he goes to a wedding. Yeah, he does. He loves this song. Yeah, do it, man! Do your turn, yeah! Hey! Nice job, Mr. Bean! Oh, it's so much fun! I dance this with my aunts, with my uncles, with my cousins. Okay. So you put your thumb on the bottom of the little dial, you put your finger right here, and you pinch the two together, okay? Pinch the two together. And then it locks back in place again. See how I did that? Finger here, thumb there, just pinch the two together, and now we have presser foot pressure again. Yeah, that's how it works. Oh, so many memories, All right. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, so much fun. If anyone's ever been at a wedding where they played the Hava Nagila song and you dance to it, put your badge of honor on, step out into the live chat and say, yep, I did it. I did it. Yeah. Can't help myself. Sorry, Julie. I saw you back there. You were doing it. Yeah, you were. I saw those little ponytails swinging around. Yeah, they were. All right, whatever. All right, let's do something here. All right, so we've got it set up right now for a straight stitch, right? Our stitch width is on 0. We're set on 4 for the length of the stitch. And then we've got this set on the default, which is straight stitch, zigzag, or buttonhole. So we're all ready to do a straight stitch. Oh, what a great song. Oh, what a great song! Oh, I hope somebody typed in the chat they tried it. I would be so sad if no one has ever had a chance to dance that dance before. It is awesome. Oh my gosh, we're still dancing. Yeah, we are. All right, let's sew something. Yeah, let's do it. Now, again, I'm using a totally different needle. I'm a little bit nervous, I'm being honest with you. I'm sewing with a size 80, which equates to a size 12 organ needle. So we're gonna see how it does. I'm a little bit nervous. And we might as well start with something totally nerve-wracking, like genuine elk hide. It's about 4 ounces thick. See that from the side? We're sewing through a belt with a size 80 organ needle because my friend said, give it a try. I said, okay, Kevin, I'll give it a try, but I'm all set to switch it to a Schmetz if this puppy breaks. Yeah, I am, in a heartbeat. All right, take-up arm is at the highest position. Let's see how this Model 2000, well, I'm not concerned about the machine. Let's see how this needle does with this sew off. All right, you ready? Here we go. And you should have heard just a little click, even with the music playing. Just a little click. And that was that clutch re-engaging again. And look at what we laid down. Kevin, you know what? I'm okay with that needle so far. Beautiful, beautiful straight stitching. And Julie was not getting that with that busted cam stack and some of the other mechanical issues. She was getting something weird and funky. So we're back to a regular straight stitch, which is fabulous. Let me cut this thread and we'll lay down another stitch on top of here as well. Probably going to be a zigzag. Are there any other movie watchers in the premiere right now? You just love watching movies? Has anyone seen the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding? It's going back a ways, but you know what? It's just a fantastic movie. So to get this ready to do a zigzag on this 100% elk hide, and if you don't know a thing about elk hide, let me tell you that it's chemically processed. So not only are we going through that, which is like a man's belt, or a woman's belt, if you're a biker, yeah. But we also have a chemical coating on this as well that kind of fortifies that elk hide when it's been processed. So it makes it a lot more difficult to get through. A lot more difficult to get through. All right, let's do a zigzag now. This again is our stitch width control. We've got to go above 0 to get a zigzag. So I'm going to go ahead and start turning that. And we're going to go up to right around probably a 2. More of a compressed zigzag. And then if we go to the stitch length control right above it, we're going to set that on 2 as well. So we're all the way up on 4. We're going to rotate it back and go down to 2. That's it. We're ready to do a zigzag. So let's do that. Yeah, I'll go right about there, I think. All right, stay still, camera. What a great song. What a great song. All right. So I've got to bring that take-up arm to the highest position, so I'm gently rotating that balance wheel. Now we're going to try to lay down a zigzag on this 100% elk hide right next to that straight stitch. All right, you ready? Here we go. I didn't sew very straight, but the machine did a great job. Yeah, I like that. Very nice. Very, very nice. And the last thing I'm going to lay down next to this is going to be a 3-point zigzag. I'll show you how to set that up as well. It only requires 1 change. Unless we want to make it shorter, then it requires 2 changes. I'll just show you guys real quick. Straight stitch and a compressed zigzag, as I call it. Beautiful, beautiful stitching. Formation, integrity of the stitch, presentation of the stitch, absolutely bang on. Bang on! And Julie right now is tapping her left foot because she was like, it wasn't doing that when I brought it to the workshop. It wasn't doing it. Now it is. All right, so now let's lay down a 3-point zigzag next to this other zigzag. Hopefully I sew this one a little bit straighter. You never know. All right, so let's go over to our stitch controller. Stitch controller right over here. I gotta loosen this camera a little bit. I really tightened it down. All right, so all we have to do is click this one position, and we're gonna be turning it counterclockwise to the left. So I'm gonna turn it one position to the left, and that's our 3-point zigzag right there. We can leave everything else the same if we want to. Our stitch length right now is on 2. Our stitch width is on 2. Or we can modify it a little bit and even compress that more, the 3-point zigzag. I think we'll leave it just the way it is to simplify things a bit. And again, just to bring you back to reality, we are sewing leather like this, laying down a zigzag with needle swing, laying down a 3-point zigzag with needle swing as well. And I don't think this Model 2000, again with a 1-amp motor. Everyone is always getting all crazy because they go into these Facebook groups and other places and they're like, if you get a Swedish Beauty, don't get it unless it has a 1.5 amp motor. It's got to have a 1.5 amp motor. I almost spit on myself. It doesn't. If that motor is optimized in the workshop, I've said this before, I will put a 1-amp motor against a 1.5 any day of the week. And after I've optimized that 1-amp motor, like Julie's, it is going to blow that 1.5 out of the water. Yeah, I mean, boom, done. It'll be a major point of embarrassment for the owner of that machine that has the 1.5 amp. Kind of like some of the cars that look like they're real common cars, but the mechanics have done their magic underneath and they put in that, you know, big block motor. They put in a racing transmission. The outside of the machine just looks regular. And some fancy performance car will pull alongside that real basic car and they'll look at each other and right away non-verbally they're saying, let's do it. And that regular looking car will launch with that big block motor that other owner can't see and with that racing transmission. And all you're going to see is the back end of that car, that common car, and that performance car will be limping behind trying to catch it. Yeah, that's pretty much my motor process right there. I'm going to take that 1-amp motor and I'm going to make it a racing motor, a racing engine. Yeah. All right, let's sew this after all of that bravado and see how this machine that belongs to Julie, that came to the workshop limping, does with this 3-point zigzag. One of my favorite stitches, by the way, one of my absolute favorite stitches. All right, here we go. 3-point zigzag. Let's get her done. And it was that easy. It was that effortless for this Model 2000. It was that effortless. And look at what it just laid down. An absolutely, are you kidding me? 3-point zigzag. One of my absolute favorite stitches. And we could totally change the look of it by making that stitch length much shorter. And then it would almost look like a snaky stitch. Yeah, it would. Absolutely amazing. So now let's set up our sew-off display holder, and I've got my regular one really handy, so I'm going to use that one. No offense to my dear friend Paula that gave me the really cool one. All right, let's look at these stitches. We're going to look at top stitch first, which again is controlled by the bobbin case below, the one that I showed you how to set up for sewing. And the upper tension is going to be managing that lock stitch that we're going to look at once we flip it over. So I'm going to pause right there and just say page 34 plus. absolutely a page 34 plus. The presentation, the formation, the integrity, the spacing, the consistency, the glory of the stitching, if you want to go there, is just bang on. Gorgeous straight stitch, gorgeous zigzag, gorgeous 3-point zigzag. Kind of, we'll go across and look at all 3 rows at the same time. So you know what? I have nothing bad to say about organ needles right about now. Kevin, you were right. It's doing a really good job so far. And we're using a smaller one too. Size 80 instead of a size 90-14. Gorgeous stitching. Totality of the stitching, what do you say? Page 34 plus. That's exactly what this machine needs to do to impress me and to impress Julie, who was getting really frustrated with it because it would start to do a zigzag and then it would revert back to a straight stitch. It was sewing a wonky straight stitch that wasn't even, it was just goofy. And now with all of the adjustments, the brand new cam stack, and all of the fine tuning and deep cleaning and the workshop magic, it's just, it's delivering at a level like when it was, well, let's just be honest. It's delivering at a level better than when it left the factory, when Julie's mom first bought it. It is. Yeah, it is. And it's doing it with an organ needle and crappy thread. I'm sorry I said crappy, Sandra, but compared to Gutermann or higher grade Coats & Clark, we're using some really low grade, thrifty type thread right now. But this machine is performing so well, it's making up for the difference. Yeah, it is. Let's look at that lock stitch. And before I do that, I'm going to rotate this to the front, show you again the thickness of the leather that we just went through with absolute ease. Absolute ease. Now the lock stitch, which again is regulated and controlled and generated through the magic of the upper tension unit. The upper tension unit is going to be this unit right here. Where is it? This unit is going to be pulling up to define the lock stitch. The bobbin case that you saw me put back into the machine down here, right about there, is going to be pulling down. This is pulling up. This is pulling down, pulling up, pulling down, pulling up. And when they work together and they're friendly and they're kind to each other, you get a perfectly balanced stitch. Perfectly balanced stitch. And that knot is right in between the layer of that material, whatever you're sewing. So let's look at these and see how this lock stitch looks. Take my hand off the camera. I'm going to get some more music going while you look at that. That little thread, I just got to pull it a little bit. Hold on a sec. Hold on. I got this. There we go. We had like a little loopy-doopy thing on the end. I had to unloopy it or undoopy it, whichever it is. But I can tell you already what I'm seeing at least is solid page 34. Solid page 34. All right, now I'm going to type in the keyword. I typed in dance before. Now I'm going to type in violin. And we'll play a little bit of violin music. Well, we're going to try to play violin music. I hope it plays. I hope it does it. No one at YouTube kicking chords, okay? So focusing on these stitches, we've got gorgeous, gorgeous lock stitches. Absolutely bang on. And again, depending on the needle you're using, the thread you're using, you might have to do a slight little, tiny little tweak. But as I'm looking at these, other than possibly bumping up my upper tension just a little tiny bit, that's the only change I would make. Some very, very beautiful stitching. Pause right there. Solid page 34 plus. Totality of the stitching. And again, look at that upper edge. We sewed through the equivalent of a man's belt or a woman's belt. And totality of the stitching, get my hand off the camera, from the straight stitch on the top row to the zigzag in the middle, to the 3-point zigzag on the bottom, absolutely spot on. And I again will say, and this is where Alex over in the UK and I might disagree. He wrote a book that has the title basically Perfect Straight Stitch or something like that, Perfect Stitch. There's no such thing, Alex. I'm sorry to say that, my friend. You can always improve upon it. You can either change the thread quality and grade, use a more appropriate needle for sewing leather. We're not using a leather needle right now. Or you can use different type of presser foot attachments that will give you better feed factor and thereby increase the quality of the stitch. But when I say page 34 plus, I'm talking about a near perfect plus stitch. It's spot on. It's exactly as we want to be seeing it, right? So I'm going to throw this to the back as a definite pass. I'm going to come out on the shot so you can admire Julie's 3-generation Model 2000. Started with her mom, went to her, and now also a granddaughter is using it as well. If there's any grandsons in the picture, I'd love to see or hear that they're using it as well. So back to the rear with this. Stitch off display holder to the side over by Herr Obermeister. And we're gonna, real quick, because I only have one set of photos to show you, we're gonna pop over to Facebook. But first of all, I'm gonna show you what Julie wrote when she saw the post that I did on Facebook. Right about there. I'm going to take my hand off. I'm trying to see when she posted that. It's probably been a little bit ago. I don't see a date. At any rate. All right about there. I think will probably work. So, she writes, "Oh my, that's my machine. Wow, it's filthy." And she's referring to the progress shots that we're going to look at. That was my mother's machine, who sewed many of our clothes when we were younger. There were 7 kids in our family. She made dresses, clothes, coats, pajamas, prom dresses, halter tops, shorts, skirts, hunting vests, quilts, curtains, placemats, gun cases, and patched many, many pairs of pants. And then she goes on to say, "I'll be so excited to get it back. It'll be like brand new." It's going to be better than brand new, Julie. It's going to be better than brand new. So let's look at those progress shots that caused this owner, 3rd-generation owner, to say, "Oh my God," what did she write? "Oh my gosh. Oh my, it's filthy." It was. Oh, it was filthy. I feel dirty right now. I need to take a shower. It was so dirty. So dirty. So let's look at those progress shots and see what caused Julie to say that. Why did she say it? Well, first of all, we're looking at a foot controller that probably was dropped. You can see a chunk of the case side of the foot controller on the back end of it cracked out of there. It's gone. And there are some repairs that I could do to that, but I've talked about this before, that the Husqvarna foot controllers, the only design flaw in them, and they're a gorgeous foot controller, right? The only design flaw is they don't have enough ventilation. So other than the possibility of pet hair or dust or dirt going into this opening that you can see right there, it's going to allow that heat to escape from the ceramic center, so that the capacitors and resistors and all of those components that are a part of this foot controller are going to get better ventilation. So I decided not to fix it unless the customer specifically said, "Could you somehow mend that, or can we replace the foot controller?" That's something we could always do. But for now, as long as she, kind of keeps that area around it clean so that not a lot of stuff is getting, into the foot controller, kind of gunking it up. That's going to allow that heat to escape. It's going to keep the foot controller cooler, especially if she's sewing slower using the foot controller, kind of like our friend Annette down in Texas when she blew hers up. She blew it up because she was trying to do free motion quilting and trying to manage the speed just with a foot controller. And what that does again is it allows that electricity to build up in the foot controller. It superheats it, it makes it really hot, and then it blows out the capacitors, which are heat sensitive. So fair warning to anyone that is looking at doing, I just saw my reflection, that was cool. Anyone that's looking to do free motion quilting with a Husqvarna Swedish Beauty, try to use the slow gear. I know it's gonna mess up your rhythm in that, but you'll get used to it, and it'll allow you to slow the machine down to 1/5 of the speed without trying to regulate the speed using only the foot controller, because inevitably you're gonna end up blowing out a capacitor on it, and then you're gonna have a dead foot controller, okay? So, fair warning, owner beware, blah, 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 okay? There, I did it. It's signed right here, yeah. Sign the disclaimer, you've been warned, So, and there's our dear Royal Highness, the King's niece, standing there looking at the damage as well, going, yeah, that's messed up, but whatever, it still works. That's just a fun shot. I started a while back throwing in random pictures. This is obviously from the 1950s. Some young ladies in school, some of them look engaged in the learning process. Some of them look like they're just, dreamy, maybe thinking about that guy or whatever. Or maybe they're looking at their books, but whatever. It's just kind of taking us back in time to a time when life was a little bit simpler, wasn't it? And there's our machine right there at the beginning points. Model 2000, again, the first in the Colormatic series, launched right around 1960. Starting to take that cord off of there and starting to really start to look at this machine and figure out what I need to do. And you can see right here that chunk of tape that Julie had put around there to hold up that light housing unit, because it was just falling down all the time. It wouldn't stay up in there. In the end, it was more than just a bolt. There were some other issues with it that I had to make adjustments to. And I don't recommend ever, even if it's Scotch tape, I do not recommend, I will not eat green eggs and ham. Yeah, Sam, I am. Don't put tape on your machines, folks, unless it's the painter's tape, which comes in different colors. But if it says painter's tape, it's going to have an adhesive factor, but it's not going to leave a residue on the machine like this stuff will. So, just don't use it. Please don't use it, because it just requires cleanup afterwards. Kind of a front shot of the machine there, kind of looking down. Opening up that faceplate like we did during this premiere, showing you that presser foot control, how to manage that. Again, lighter presser foot pressure if you're sewing lighter materials, heavier presser foot pressure if you're sewing heavier materials. Light, light, heavy, heavy. Yeah, that could be a song. Here we're kind of looking over here where just from the machine going through 3 generations, starting with Julie's mom, going to Julie, now we have a granddaughter in the mix. You can see that wear of taking that bed on and off. The paint is gone. The paint is gone. But you know what? That's a sign that the machine has gotten a lot of use, a lot of love, isn't it? So there's no harm with that. No harm with that. And there again is our raceway. A lot of servicing to do in there. And even though if you read the original Husqvarna materials, it'll say jam-free raceway requires no lubrication. That is a bunch of malarkey. It's a bunch of malarkey. Once that raceway area is totally disassembled and the rear mounting plate recoated if it needs it, because that stuff will eventually chip off behind the bobbin case. You can't see it right now. It's behind the bobbin case, it's behind the hook, but sometimes that gets kind of messed up. And you've seen me before in other progress shots where I'll actually use a Teflon type material to recoat that surface again so that thread operating in the hook area isn't getting snagged on a chippy surface. Is that a thing, a chippy surface? I think it is. So But again, a lot of service that has to be done in that area. But again, launch into using your Swedish Beauty with confidence, knowing that the Swedish perfected the jam-free raceway, and it does a brilliant job with heavier threads. It does. It just does a brilliant job. But on most machines, if you're using heavier threads, you'll want to operate it down on the raceway. You'll want to go with a lighter thread on top. Let me say that again. If you're looking to do whatever kind of sewing, it doesn't matter, and you're wanting to use heavier threads, we're talking larger than, say, size, 80 or so, 80 plus. So we're in the upholstery thread range or above. On most any machine, you're going to want to put that thread on the bobbin down in the raceway. You're not going to want to be feeding it from up on top. You're going to want to find a complementary thread that is color matched, assuming that that's an important element in your project. Use the lighter thread up top, use the heavier thread down below, whether it's a Husqvarna or a Singer or a Bernina or whatever. And the reason is when you're trying to run a heavier thread up top, let me go over to the machine just for a second. When you're trying to run a heavier machine, that's not what I meant to say. When you're trying to run a heavier thread from up top, just like when I showed you how to thread this Husqvarna, you've got to go through a lot more turns and bends and everything else. You got to run that heavier thread through there, through those tension discs, around that take-up spring, all the way up to the take-up arm, all the way through that thread guide there, through the needle, and then it has to swoop down through the throat plate. It's a lot of turns, a lot of bends, a lot of navigation for that heavier thread. You can avoid that by running it down here. All that has to happen then is that hook has to grab that thread, complete that process of sewing, you're done. So follow that principle. Heavier thread down below, lighter thread, complementary color presumably, up top, okay? Yeah, that was it. That's all I wanted to say. Just took a long time to say it. So there's part of our hook system right there from this Model 2000. And again, I go through a process of taking all of that apart. There's our faceplate again. We're kind of looking at the presser foot bar kind of sticking up there. And again, that discoloration from the oil that kind of penetrates that clear coat and gets deep into the patina of the machine. Some of it you'll be able to clean up, but unless you start sanding on it, you're not going to get it all the way, and that's okay. That's okay. Kind of looking down, you can see all those oiling points. Again, don't over oil your machines. Too much oil can be as harmful as too little oil. 1 to 2 drops about every 8 to 10 hours of sewing is sufficient for a Swedish Beauty or any other machine. 1 to 2 drops of oil about every 8 to 10 hours of sewing. Now right there I've got my torch, and what am I doing? I'm right near that knob. Oh, I see. What I'm doing, okay, that makes sense now. What I'm doing is I'm softening the grip of that tape. I'm a distance away, probably a good 4 inches, 5 inches away. You don't want to be too close because you'll set the tape on fire, because the torch is going to be putting out about 1,000 to 1,200 degrees. Okay? So you want to be a safe distance away from the surface of the machine, but by just hitting it with a couple of quick bursts of the torch, it's going to soften that grip of the tape and allow it to peel off without damaging the surface. It's going to leave a little bit of a residue behind, but it's going to be a lot easier to remove it without damaging the patina. And again, that doggone person at YouTube kicked the cord again, took out our music. What are you doing that for? So you don't have to do this. You could use another means. You could use a hairdryer or something like that. My torch was handy, so I just very, very carefully and skillfully hit it with a couple of bursts of high heat, and then I was able to peel that tape off straight away. And I left a little bit of residue behind, but it didn't damage the clear coat that was remaining or anything like that. So that's really the biggest concern. As soon as you damage the clear coat on a machine, the paint is vulnerable and you've got a major issue on your hands. Now there's that light assembly that was being held up by that tape. You can see right away it's plopping down. It's not set up properly. And it was missing a screw, but that was only part of the problem. So you can see Julie basically mummified the light with tape, trying to make sure that it was held together and it was safe. So I've got to get all that tape off of there now. Now we're on the back of the machine. I'm taking the cover off. A lot of service points on this Model 2000 on the back. Also, I always inspect the cleated belt as well, which helps the machine with timing and also drives the main shaft. A lot of buildup, a lot of caramelization on the parts. Again, it's not patina. It's a sticky, dried, gooey mess that restricts the movement of the machine, so you got to try to get all of that off as best as you can. Also, there's spring releases and everything else here for the reverse and also for the tri-action of the machine as well. Tri-action, by the way, is what allows you to generate some of the more ornate decorative stitches. It's the feed dogs being manipulated by the mechanics of the machine, so they're not just moving forward and back, they're moving forward, forward, back, back, forward, forward, back, back, forward, very rapidly in a very aggressive fashion to manipulate that material to generate the stitch along with the needle movement. Here we're looking at the shaft that the cam stack is on, and I could see right away that that cam stack was damaged, and there were some other issues going on as well. Again, just general filthiness on the machine. It's kind of what Julie noticed as well as she was looking at it. More service points back there that have to be dealt with. There's our cleated belt, which is also used, most of you know, is used by other companies as well, because it was really a wonderful innovation. And along with the webbing in between it, they're very long lasting. So Foff started using them, some of the Berninas are using them, some of the Elnas are using them, and a lot of companies adopted this type of timing belt. More springs that have to be checked and adjusted if needed. There's a closer look at our cam stack assembly. If you look real close right here, you can see where the cam stack cracked. It cracked, and it's basically a thin ring of plastic. It's high-grade plastic, but it's still plastic. And over time, from pushing the cams in, pulling them out, pushing the cams in, the heat of the machine, the cold of the machine when it's not in use, all those factors cause that plastic eventually to become brittle, and then it snaps. And what that then happens is, as you have that cam on there, it's allowing that cam to slip, and it's causing the stitches to become distorted, which is what Julie was experiencing with the machine. There you can really see that separation right there. And this is a pretty common occurrence on not just the Model 2000, but it happens a lot on the 6000 series Colormatics as well. It leads me to believe, and I don't have any proof of this, but it leads me to believe that with this chronic reoccurring problem through the entire Colormatic series family, from the very first machine, which is this 2000, all the way through all of the Colormatic phases, well beyond even the 6000 series, that they probably adjusted the quality of that plastic or made it a little bit thinner, so it was a little bit more susceptible to cracking over time. This is what I call the reader finger right here, and this also needed a number of adjustments. As the cam is turning on the rear of the machine, this finger is reading the bumps, almost like Braille. It's reading the bumps on the cam, and it's interpreting what those bumps mean by the engineering of the machine, and then it translates that into a stitch output. So that finger is moving in and out, kind of reading like Braille, and generating the stitches that you desire. That is assuming it's working properly, which it wasn't when it came to the workshop. Then we're looking at the rear of the machine. We're looking at the data plate right here as well. Now we're looking at some of those extra holes on the back of the motor cover, the engine cover, that you periodically need to be cleaning, because the motor acts like what in the environment of the machine? What does the motor act like? It's another type of appliance. Type that in the chat if you'd be so kind. There you can really see discoloration, dirt, filth that gets pulled into that motor, and then it affects the performance of the motor. And that 1 amp is no longer a 1 amp motor, it's much, much less. Again, I'm just showing you different shots of all the filth and the dirt. There's our plug-in point for the foot controller, and that also gets filthy in there as well. And again, it's right in proximity to the motor, the engine, so that should also be cleaned. Also, for the sake of the connectivity and the conductivity of that electrical field that you're plugging the foot controller in, you want to have the best, the most positive conductivity of that electricity so that you get the maximum output. It's really cold in the workshop today, so if I'm not pronouncing things as well as you normally would hear me doing it, it's because it's frigid down here, even with heat. So confidence, I love this quote. It's a wonderful quote. And again, one of the random things that I'll put in with progress shots on Facebook. Confidence isn't thinking you are better than anyone else. It's realizing you have no reason to compare yourself to anyone else. I think that there's a lot of truth in that. You should run your own race in life. You should use your gifts and talents and God-given skills that you have that are unique compared to anyone else in the world, and not necessarily compare you to someone else. But you know what? The truth of the matter is we do anyway, don't we? Especially in the VSM space. When you have a lot of prominence and visibility like I do, I have people sometimes that are competitors that will either embrace my gifts and skills and will learn from me, just as I do with other VSM people, or they will become confrontational. And I've had some of that sometimes happen in the premieres, where someone is really, really trying to aggressively challenge me. And that's not the place for it. If you want to reach out to me privately and challenge some of the things that I presented in the classroom here, by all means do that. It's only going to make us both better, either by confirming for you that I was right, or by solidifying the fact that your point is well taken and I need to look at something through a different viewing glass. You know what I mean? Through a different viewing glass. But when you do it publicly just to try to become confrontational, you're probably going to get thrown in the timeout box either by me or by one of my moderators. So just be aware of that. Find the right arena to be confrontational if you want to. And realize what I say all the time. As much as people reach out to me and treat me like I'm some sort of I love this song, this is crazy. As much as people will try to lift me up on a pedestal and say, Scott, you are world renowned, which is true, I'm still a student. I'm still learning every single day. I always say it, sometimes a teacher, always a student. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great song. What a fun song. So again, we're kind of looking at the motor casing, general cleanliness, side of the machine where that bob and winding assembly is. Look at how dirty that is in here. And that's right in proximity to the motor or the engine. So if you don't clean that up, eventually it's going to migrate into the motor and trash the motor again. Taking off that side panel, inspecting belts, deciding whether or not belts need to be replaced. The answer was yes. I did do belt replacement on this machine and also did cleaning of all those pulleys as well. A lot of service points in there. See all that filth inside of there? This is a combination of carbon dust from the motor as it consumes those motor brushes. It's remnants of the belts because they were degrading, and it's just dirt and filth over the years. Again, machine was used by Julie's mom, by Julie, and now by a granddaughter. It's gotten a lot of use. And again, depending on the environment of the home, if you have pets, if you have smokers, If you leave your windows open during the summer when they're doing road work and that dust and stuff is floating into your household, whatever it is, or if you have your sewing area near the kitchen where there's a lot of grease and stuff being injected into the air, it'll impact your sewing machine. So think about that when you set up your sewing space. Take that into consideration. But see all that junk in there? We need to get rid of that. We just do. That's awful. That's awful. More of it everywhere. Look at, and this is right in proximity. The motor is right there, right at the top. On the other side of that output pulley. It is just so, it's being choked. The life of the motor is being choked right out of it, and the entire, it impacts the entire machine. So, a lot of deep cleaning, a lot of work on that. Look at that. Isn't that awful? That's just awful. Filthy, 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 filthy. Or as Julie said, oh my. That's exactly right. See all that? Look at all this. All that junk built up in there. Look at down here. More junk in there. Part of that is remnants of the belts because they were in pretty poor shape. My hands are so cold, they're almost numb. I'm numb. Here's one of the spring tensioners. If you ever get ambitious and you decide to say, Scott talked about how important it is to service the bobbin assembly because it serves as the automatic clutch disengagement. It serves as the slow gear. It does a number of other things. It evenly distributes the power coming off of that output shaft on the motor and then feeds it into the pulley assembly and then drives it up to the main shaft through that long belt, and then it sends it all the way across the machine down to the needle bar. That's a pretty important thing. Just be aware, you know, really do what Emma does. Emma, if she's deciding to be ambitious about machines, she will actually turn on a video camera and videotape herself doing whatever she's doing. So if she ends up going down the wrong path, she can undo it. She can look back and see exactly what she did and do the opposite. So that's really a good idea if you're deciding you want to be ambitious about your machine. Great, but just set yourself up for success by documenting exactly what you've done so you can always undo it. And the point of me talking about that spring right there is you've got to get a very good sweet equilibrium on that bobbin assembly so that it's not pulling too hard on that short belt that comes off of the motor and putting excessive drag on it, and it's providing enough tension from top to bottom with that long belt that power is being fed through that bobbin assembly evenly, and you're not losing any of the power of that 1-amp motor once that motor's been optimized. You don't want to create any drag factors. You don't want to create any excessive resistance. You don't want to make that motor work any harder than it has to. So it's getting that sweet balance from front to back, top to bottom, okay? So just be aware of that. There's part of the bobbin assembly as well. This again is going to get pulled out as you pull that ring out to engage that slow gear. And there's a lot of service points behind there that have to be optimized to make that mechanism work flawlessly. See all those gears? That's all part of the bobbin winding assembly. And some of them need to be dry, some points on there need to be lubricated, but it always starts with the process of stripping it all the way down to get all that old grease and oil and dirt off of there. I think I've said before, just servicing the bobbin assembly and optimizing it so it can work in concert with the motor and the long belt and the main shaft and everything takes about an hour and a half. Again, if you take your machine to a basic service center, on your entire machine, they're going to spend about 45 minutes to an hour. If they go an hour, I want to hear who they are because I want to give them a kudos. Because most service people in service centers, to stay profitable because they have all that overhead, they spend about 30 to 45 minutes on a machine. I'm just giving it to you straight. So they spend less time on the entire machine than I spend just on the bobbin winding assembly unit. As my friends say, true dat, true dat. Yeah. So there's our girl again, kind of hanging out by the back of the machine. There's our foot controller. And the foot controller needs servicing as well. I didn't show that in these progress shots, but in order for the motor to be optimized, you also have to optimize the foot controller as well. I think we went full circle, didn't we? Pretty much, I think. Well, maybe not. There's our lighting assembly kind of disassembled, and I'm servicing different things. I'm also making some adjustments to the carriage and also verifying the electrical wiring as well coming into that light. All the different components of the lighting assembly. My mouth is freezing, folks. If I can't talk, you're just gonna have to, I don't know. I wish we had like a person in the background doing the sign language, because that would help right about now. It is so cold! Ah! And this also requires cleaning as well, doesn't it? Because we've got electrical factors, we've got the conductivity, if that's a word, otherwise I'm making a word, conductivity, how well the electricity is flowing through the circuits and the contact points where that bulb is plugged in and everything. Also the brightness factor, anything that's going to be restricting that light and coming down to the bed and the needle area, you've got to eliminate those factors as well, which requires some very targeted cleaning, doesn't it? And you got to be using the right type of cleaning solvents, especially when there's electricity involved, right? Even if the machine hopefully is not plugged in when you're doing it, right? Filthy, absolutely filthy. Getting all that cleaned up, and some of this stuff is so sticky and so caked on, you can't just wipe it off. You got to actually carefully chip it away using dental tools. More cleaning. Doesn't that look better? That's our reflective shield right at the top of the assembly that's going to push that light back down to the bed and the needle area, and it was just caked in filth, which means when that light was trying to bounce off of it, it was hitting that and going, I can't go anywhere. So anyone that ever said lighting assemblies don't require maintenance, they don't know what they're talking about. Now we're starting to reassemble it. It's been cleaned, it's been verified, it's been adjusted. It's going to be easy to open and close for Julie and for her grandsons. Julie, get some of your grandsons involved on this too. Assuming you have some. Otherwise, rent a grandson and let them try it. Yeah, try that. Now what I'm having to do is one of the bolts was rubbing against the housing of the machine, and so I had to do some cutting on it to get it to the proper length. I don't know if it was replaced at some point or it just had a barb on the end, but I just decided it needed to be cut down so that it was free flowing. And those are sparks. And yes, I have safety goggles on. Because along with the sparks, there's also little flecks of metal flying around as well. And you definitely don't want those in your eye. You do not want to have metal going in your eye. Reggie White, when he saw those sparks, he was like, ooh. He's a Green Bay Packer. Nothing phases him. Now we're also grinding off the ends so there's no barbs or catch points that are going to hit the housing of the machine as that light assembly is raised and lowered. So I'm using the grinding point of the cutting disc as well. All assembled, that light is absolutely rocking the world of that sewer now. It's so easy to see what's happening on the bed and down by the needle now. What am I showing? Oh, I'm showing her the foot controller. That is full circle now. Now we have finally gone full circle. So those are the only progress shots that I took. There were a lot of other things going on with the machine, including the cam stack replacement. But I don't always have the time or the inspiration to document everything. But from start to finish, this project was probably about 16 hours, including the cam stack replacement. So very time-consuming project. But this is a third generational machine Julie's mom, Julie now, granddaughter, grandson hopefully if you got one, and getting the whole family involved with this incredible heirloom machine from the 1960s. All right, so all of that blah, blah, blah. We were just talking about the slow gear, weren't we? Let's go ahead and engage the slow gear and employ that in the process of the next sew off. Let's do that. So all I'm going to do is turn the light on, and now I'm going to pull that ring out, and I'm flexing my hands because they are almost turning blue. It's really cold. I think we're supposed to hit minus 10 or minus 15, and that's without wind chill. So I just pulled out our slow gear. It's engaged now. Now we're going to head over near, let's see, what could I do now? Yeah, I could do that. I could do that. I could lay down that 3-point zigzag, which is what we're set on right now, which I think is one of my favorite stitches. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Right now we're on a 2 by 2. I think I'll go down to like 1.5 by 1.5. So I'll change that real quick while you're looking with me. And then we're going to do some controlled sewing on some protected full grain leather. So I'm going to rotate this counterclockwise down to about 1.5 for stitch width, 1.5 on stitch length. There we go. We're going to get our protected full grain leather in place. And again, we've engaged our slow gear, so you're going to hear that the machine sounds different when it's running. It's going to sound different because that speed of the machine is being retarded back by the gear reduction. It's holding the machine back as far as the speed. It's not choking the machine like, you know, you're holding it back and you're causing it to work harder. It's just slowing that revolution down to reduce the speed down to 1/5. So this again is protected full grain leather, and kind of like the elk hide, it's going to have a coating on it that is designed to protect it from staining and give it more durability as far as wearing. So it raises that piercing threshold, doesn't it? Right away, you know that. So my take-up arm's already at the highest position. I'm going to launch into this, and I'll give you one little tip. When you're using the slow gear, because of that gear reduction, it binds that balance wheel from you being able to manually rotate it. So as you're changing, as I sew around this oblonged, odd-shaped chunk of protected full grain leather, if I have to make a turn and I can't do it, I'm going to stop. I'm going to disengage that slow gear, rotate the balance wheel so the needle is down in the material so I don't lose my place, and then I'm going to re-engage that slow gear again by pulling that ring back out again. Otherwise, if you try to force that balance wheel, you're going to break something. So as you're trying to use the slow gear, if you have to make a turn, if you think you're going to miss a turn, stop, disengage the slow gear, rotate that balance wheel down with a needle in the material, and then once you got that material positioned right with that presser foot up temporarily, go ahead and lower your presser foot, re-engage that slow gear, and then resume your sewing, okay? Blah, my mouth is frozen. My mouth is frozen, I can't even talk. Blah. Let me get a drink of water, maybe that'll kind of defrost me a little bit. Yeah, I just have a small little utility heater down here, and when it gets to temperatures like this, even though it's blowing heat right on me almost, it's not enough. It is just wicked cold. Wicked cold! Alright, enough blah blah blah. Let's launch into this. I think I have the music quiet enough. And now we're going to employ that slow gear to try to navigate this protected full grain leather. Alright, here we go! Alright, I'm going to stop right there. Needle is down. That's brilliant. So I don't need to disengage the slow gear right now because the needle is into the material. I'm just going to raise that presser foot. I'm going to very gently rotate that material around so I can finish my next edge off. And then we'll resume sewing. Just going to check my camera shot real quick. Yeah, that's not a bad shot, actually. Yeah, that's pretty good, actually. We'll come a little bit closer. And there's the stitching that we've already done. You can see it extending back that way. A lovely, lovely 3-point zigzag on this protected full grain leather. So let's get back in motion again. And we'll go all the way around the edges of this. And I'm just trying to demonstrate the beauty of that slow gear is control. It's all about control, isn't it? Here we go. Stop right there. Now this time I didn't time it right, so my needle is up and I can't rotate the balance wheel because the slow gear is engaged and it's binding it right now. It's overriding my ability to turn that balance wheel. So you'll hear me push in the slow gear and now I can rotate the balance wheel as soon as I've done that. So I'm rotating that. Hear it click. I'm going to rotate that needle down into the material. There we go. I'm going to engage that slow gear again. Raise my presser foot, kind of realign my material just a little bit to make my life a little bit easier. There we go. And now I'm going to resume sewing again. And again, where I wouldn't be as hesitant to kind of muscle that material a little bit, I'm cognizant of the fact that I've got a lighter gauge needle in there. And it's kind of an unproven needle to me. It's an organ needle. So listen again, I'm shutting off that slow gear, rotating that needle down in the material, raising that presser foot, swinging my material around, dropping that presser foot again, re-engaging the slow gear. So yeah, it's kind of an unproven needle. It's a size 80-12. I usually use a 90-14, and it's an organ, it's not a Schmetz. So while I'm trying to make some of these turns, I would sooner go through the extra steps of disengaging the slow gear, rotating the needle down into the material, and realigning it than trying to torque that material and possibly break the needle. Because as soon as you're torquing a needle, whether you're trying to force feed it instead of letting the feed dogs do their work, or you're otherwise trying to manipulate that material under the stress of the needle moving, you're going to distort or force that needle to flux outside of its normal range of motion, and it's very likely then to hit the edges of the throat plate where that needle should be passing through very easily. So you break a needle, what's the big deal? I got a lot of needles, right? But you're also going to scar that throat plate, and then as that thread is being brought up from the bobbin case, it's going to be snagging, and you're going to create more problems for yourself. Get what I'm saying? So take the extra time to do what you need to do instead of trying to shortcut it and creating damage or problems for your machine, okay? All right, that was my little speech. That was my speech. Yeah, I was speeching. All right. So I'm disengaging the slow gear again, rotating that needle down, rotating my needle, or my material rather, so I can orientate it otherwise. Re-engaging that slow gear, and while I'm over here, I'm just going to clip my threads real quick so I don't get them caught somewhere. There we go. Trim that one too. There we go. I'm just really curious real quick. Hold on a second. You guys know me. I love making this a classroom where we can learn and discover new things and fun things together. So I got my shot right here of the material. I'm going to use my heat gun, and I'm just going to shoot the casing of the machine so you can get an idea of how cool it is in the workshop right now. All right, are you ready? Can you see that in the shot? It's about 55 degrees, and that's with heat running. Plus I have my main furnace driving heat over here as well. It's only about 55 degrees in the workshop. Now, any of you that live in Florida, that's going to sound like the dead of winter, right? But take into account, as bizarre as this sounds, 55.5 degrees, almost 56 degrees is what the casing of the machine is, which means the ambient temperature is probably even a little bit cooler than that, right? It's going to be a little bit cooler because we've got the mechanics of the machine working, we've got some heat coming from the LED light, and yet the casing is still only about 55 degrees. But think about the outside air temperature being at 0 or below 0. it's about 55 to 60 degrees warmer on the body of this machine right now than it is outside right now. Doesn't that blow your mind? That's kind of crazy, isn't it? It's downright cold. As my father would have said, there's frost on the pumpkin. Yeah, there is. Let us see if we can find a pumpkin. I don't know if there's any pumpkins or not. All right, let's go back to sewing. Here we go. All right, I think my needle is kind of down, so I'm going to risk it. I think it's down enough I can rotate the material without losing my spot. Sort of, maybe. Lower my presser foot again. I didn't even have to turn off my slow gear, which is awesome. Here we go. So I didn't time it right. My needle is up, so I've got to shut my slow gear off, rotate that balance wheel down into the material, presser foot up, rotate the material, back down, slow gear on, resume sewing. I'm going to press this needle a little bit right here. Kind of sewed off the material a little bit there, I think. Kind of forced it a little bit. It made me nervous. All right. I'm kind of like not really underneath the presser foot. Hold on a second. There we go. All right, now I'm going to finish off this last few stitches. Here we go. So, you know what? Slow gear off. All in all, I'm really pleased with the way this Oregon size 80 needle managed all of that. It did a really nice job. And we got some beautiful stitching around the edges of this protected full grain leather. Again, we're talking about 4 ounces of leather, folks. 4 ounces. If ounces don't mean anything to you, we're talking about leather that's probably about 3 millimeters thick. About 3 millimeters thick. That is, and it's got that coating on it because it's protected, right? Hence the name, protected full grain leather. So, and this Viking 2000, Viking Husqvarna 2000, just sewed around this with a slow gear with absolute ease, and not again because the slow gear increased the power. Same amount of power, just gearing it down so that we could manage the speed factor. So let's look at these stitches. Again, this is a 3-point zigzag, one of the stitches that's built into the machine. It's not from the cam, it's engineered into the machine. And if you're looking at that little mark there and going, what's going on with that mark? I buy my leather remnants from a company that's local that does seats in those real fancy Lear jets and the private jets. And all the stuff that they don't use to actually make the seats, the stuff they cut away in that, they bag it up and then they will allow the public to buy it, which is how I buy my leather scraps. Along with Emma at one point sent me a bag full of saddle grade leather as well that she found down in Florida, which was really a wonderful blessing. So let's go around and look at this stitching. Again, look at the edge of that leather as we go by. About 3 to 4 ounces of protected full grain leather. Sewing using the slow gear with a lot of needle movement. Look at right there. Look at that edge. Let me take my hand off the camera. Folks, that's a lot of leather. Don't even think for a second that this is an easy peasy sew off, especially considering we're using a thrifty quality thread and we're using a non-leather Oregon size 80-12 needle. And we're laying down page 34 plus stitching like this, navigating around this leather. It's no small achievement. I'm very, very impressed. Beautiful, beautiful stitching. Look at that edge right there. Oh my goodness. Yes, I know I could have gone further out to the tip, but I was cowardly because I'm dealing with an unknown commodity needle. I'm gonna get some nasty letters from some real Oregon needle proponents, or from the company itself, or maybe they'll send me free needles. Y'all reach out to the Oregon Needle Company wherever they're based, okay? You show him this video and say, Scott needs to have his confidence raised that he can rely on organ needles as much as he does on Schmetz needles. Y'all do that, please. Write or call the organ sewing machine needle company, show him this premiere, and say, help Scott have greater confidence, send him a bunch of free needles. All right? They send me a lot of needles. I'll give some away to all of you too. So there's, that's your skin in the game, all right? Folks, that is beautiful stitching. Even right there where I did some, I don't know what I was doing there, but it was kind of weird. So, but beautiful stitching all the way around. You can look right there at the bottom too. Gorgeous, gorgeous stitching. Totality of the stitching kind of come out to there. You see what I'm saying when you look at the way that I cut this leather with all these turns and banks and all that crazy stuff going on, right? But that slow gear saved us. That slow gear gave me the ability to navigate that territory on the leather and do it successfully. Yes, with a couple of pauses, but those pauses were in part because I just didn't want to stress that size 80 needle too much. The lighter the gauge needle, as you go away from 90 down to 80, 70, 60, blah, 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 you're going to be having a lot more bendability of that needle as you start to put stress on that needle. It's going to flux more, which means it's even more prone to break as it hits that throat plate. And the last thing I want to do with a customer's machine is scar that throat plate, because then I have to take that throat plate off. I have to get probably right around 2,000 grit sandpaper, and I have to meticulously sand all of that burring off to get that surface nice and clear again. And if it's down to the original casting material that they make those throat plates out of, then I have to also look at recoating it as well. So it creates a lot of headache by just being lazy and not taking the extra steps to navigate something like this with a lighter needle. Make sense? Give me a smiley face or something in the chat if you would, if you understand what I'm talking about as you go down in the graded needles where you're more vulnerable, especially if you become anxious and you start to stress or flex that needle too much and cause it to go outside the boundaries of that throat plate opening. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful stitching. And again, with a 3-point zigzag, it's a precision stitch. It just is. Let's look at that lock stitch. The beauty of the protected full grain leather is there's not a super heavy nap, so we should be able to see that stitching fairly well. It's not going to be absolutely crystal clear, but we should be able to see it to some extent, somewhere. Come on, show me something, doggone it. Oh, there we go. I see a little bit. I see it. I see it right there. Let me take my hand off the camera. There it is. Hey! Let me rotate that leather a little bit more. A little bit more towards the camera. Maybe that'll help. And again, depending on where leather is cut from the hide, the density of that nap is going to be slightly different. So whereas from another part of protected full grain leather, they cut it from another part of the hide and that nap would have been flatter, we got a little bit more of a afro type nap here. Yeah, we do. Well, we'll go around. You'll be able to catch glimpses of that lock stitch. Again, look at the thickness of that leather. Take my hand off right there and you can really focus in on those lock stitching right there. And again, we've got our setting on, if you want to duplicate this on your Model 2000, we've got it at 1.5 on stitch length, 1.5 on stitch width. And we're doing the 3-point zigzag again. Folks, that is absolutely drop dead gorgeous stitching right there. And that is representative of all the other stitching right now that's being masked by that nap from the protected full grain leather. Beautiful, beautiful stitching. There you can really see it right there. Let me get my hand off the camera again. Absolutely spot on. Solid page 34 plus. Again, not a perfect stitch, but a near perfect stitch, because we can always make it better. That's part of our, what is that part of our philosophy of? It's 4 letters. 4 letters. Anyone that types it in the chat first is going to get the offer of, if you contact me, I'll send you something special. I don't care where you are in the world. I've sent stuff to Australia. I've sent it to the UK. I've sent it to Germany. I've sent it to Canada. I've sent to, where was that one? I've got a trailer of it. Oh, I can't even think. Uganda? No, I don't remember where it was, but I'll send you something special if you get it right. Look at the thickness of that leather right there. So totality of stitching, we're not going to be able to go out very far. And all you can pretty much is see the beautiful leather. But there's stitching there really is. And this machine, Julie's mother's machine that became Julie's machine and now a granddaughter, it is just stitching up a storm beautifully. So I'm going to throw this to the back as a pass as well. Again, this sew-off was about showing the strength of the machine, the precision of the machine, and being able to manage the speed using the slow gear. So I'm going to throw that to the back. Get this out of the way. And now I think we will go to some of Paula's special 100% cotton. Does anyone remember what kind of cotton this is? Type it in the chat if you remember what kind of cotton Paula sent me. This stuff right here. So if you didn't get it right, the earlier question I asked you about what is our principle that we go by, it's called Kanai. And when I used to be an executive working with Pepsi and working with General Motors way back in the day after I got out of college, that was some of the work that I did, working with great schools, teaching young students marketing at Seattle University, Gonzaga University, North Idaho College, just to mention a few. And also I worked with one university in Washington State, and I'm just totally blanking on what the name of the university is. But I also worked with high schools as well, teaching them marketing by bringing principals in from the automotive industry when I was working with General Motors educational programs. But I adopted something from their teaching to managers and executives about we're not as good today as we were yesterday. Did I say that wrong? We always get better. In other words, we're going to be better tomorrow than we were the day before, but we're going to be even better the day after that. You know, again, I'm partially frozen, so if I don't sound like I'm making total sense, forgive me for that. Because hypothermia sets in, your mind gets a little cloudy. And again, if the ambient temperature of the machine is 55 degrees, it's probably about 50 degrees or cooler in the workshop. So, but at any rate, I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying that the idea of constant and never-ending improvement is exactly what it says. We're always going to get better. Let's not be happy with mediocrity. Let's continue to improve on things, whether it's the quality of the stitch, the servicing and the maintenance on the machines, or whatever it is. Let's just make it better and better and better and better. That's Kanai. So this cotton we're using is called what is it called? Coda? Hold on a second. I got it. I think it's Kona. K-O-N-A, is that right? Yeah. Kona. K-O-N-A. 100% cotton that Paula sent with a number of preset samples like this. She even put a pin through them for me so that I could keep the batting and the cotton lined up properly, which is awesome. That's totally cool. So let's employ the cam function of this machine, and we'll do it sewing on Kona 100% cotton that Paula Noel from Florida sent me several samples of it. So if we want to do a stitch, and we know we have cam C in the machine, right? We have a choice of a green stitch, a red stitch, a yellow stitch, or a blue stitch. We're just going to do them in order. We'll start with the green stitch, which I call kind of a Christmas tree stitch. How do we set that up? Not too hard at all, actually. We'll go right about to there. I'll actually come in a little bit closer. So we have to set these 3 dials to green. That's the beauty of the Colormatic system, is you color match, assuming you're not colorblind, you color match each of these dials with the same color in relation to the stitch of the cam that you have in,
and then you can sew that stitch. So we've got to turn this knob from blue to yellow to red, eventually to green. Then we have to adjust, and this again is our stitch selector. Then we have to take our stitch length control and we have to bring that into the green region as well. And I think I went the wrong way, which happens. There we go. Now we're in the green region. And I'll zoom in on these so you can see it. And then finally we have to move our stitch width selector over to green as well, which is going to be our rainbow setting. Our rainbow setting will give us the option to sew any of the stitches that are labeled as green, red, yellow, or blue. So I'll zoom in on this now so you can see what we just did. So if you acquire a Colormatic, or you have one and you just haven't used it, you can see all we did is match to the little white dot green, which also shares purple as well. That again is our stitch selector. Then we went over to our stitch length, and we have green and red sharing the same space, but since we're doing a green stitch, we're going to set it there. Then finally our stitch width, we set it on the rainbow setting, which covers us for green, red, yellow, or blue for stitch width. And again, we're going to be aiming to sew this stitch right here, the Christmas tree one, which is on cam C. And let me just tell you this, that they made a lot of different types of cams for the different versions of Colormatics. So just make sure that the stitches that are reflected on the cam that you want to put into your machine line up with the same letter on the facing of your machine here. So in other words, if we were going to put in a cam A, the cam that we're putting in should have the purple stitch, the red stitch, the yellow stitch, the blue stitch that you're seeing right there. Same thing with cam B, cam C that we're using, and also cam D. Now that is not to say that you couldn't take another cam from another Colormatic series version and put it inside of a Husqvarna Viking 2000. Here's the problem when you do that. Yes, the reader finger that I showed you in the progress shots is going to be able to read that cam to some extent, but depending on the settings and whether or not that's a tri-action type decorative stitch again that's going to be manipulating the feed dogs aggressively, you may not get the right kind of output. You'll get some sort of output, but it may not match what it would on another machine that's going to have a slightly different cam stack, a slightly different reader finger, and a slightly different mechanical setup. Does that make sense? So you can experiment, but here's what I recommend that you do before you do that. If you're going to experiment with another cam that really should be for a different Colormatic series or version, hand turn that machine with material underneath that presser foot before you try engaging the foot controller, just in case it pushes that needle further than the boundary of that throat plate and you end up scarring that throat plate trying to experiment with a different cam. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, would you give me a smiley face, a thumbs up, whatever you want to throw in there, just to acknowledge that you're following what I'm saying, the cautionary statements I'm giving you, okay? I want you guys to always be set up for success, and I want you to be adventurous. I want you to have fun, but realize there can be consequences from that too, okay? All right, so back to cam C. We're going to be sewing the Christmas tree first. We've set it up to do that. And again, when you look at these settings, not so much on the stitch selector, you're going to be relegated to setting it right on that green purple. But when you get into the stitch length, notice that you can rotate that knob further than even the boundaries of where you see the green red. In other words, if I want to tighten up that Christmas tree and make it even more defined, I can be a rebel to some extent, and I can go beyond where I'm at right now. Let me show you what I mean. Right now I'm right around on 1 1/4 or so. Let's say I want to go below. I want to go right about to there and make that even more compressed. I can do that. I probably won't go much further than that. I'll be right in that range, right in the center between 0 and 0.5. So I'm outside the boundaries of the original setting, but that's okay. It's still going to deliver on the stitch pattern because we selected it on the stitch selector,
It's just going to compress it a little bit more, which means that stitching is going to be tighter. It's going to give I think it's going to give a nice final product to it that will be even nicer than if we had turned it within that green-red range. Does that make sense? And we can do the same thing down here when we're not relegated to the rainbow pattern. Right now we're stuck with the rainbow pattern, but if we were setting it on one of the other colors, which we can't even see right now, we might have some choice in how do we calibrate, fine-tune that choice within the range of that stitch. See what I'm saying? Up here we've got a little bit of discretion we can exercise. Down here we really don't because it's on that rainbow pattern. Up here we don't have any discretion because we have to be on the green purple setting because of the stitch that we're doing, the Christmas tree stitch. Same thing will be the case when we choose the red, the yellow, and the blue stitch as well. All right, all of that blah blah blahing probably either confused you or left you saying, we got it like 20 minutes ago, Scott. We got it, buddy. But I just want, the classroom is all about making sure that people at different levels are following what we're saying as well. So if it seems a little bit rudimentary because you have more experience sewing, God bless you, but we don't want to leave anybody behind, okay? So I'm going to take this Kona 100% cotton, this fancy stuff that Paula sent me. I'm going to take that really cool pin out, and I'm going to put my little clips on to kind of hold that nicely together. And I'll put my other little clip on to hold the other end of it nicely together. Get it underneath the presser foot. Presser foot is down. So now we're going to be buzzing down on this Kona 100% cotton, and we're going to be trying to generate some Christmas trees. I'll tell you in advance that because of my thread choice, of it being a white thread, the trees are not going to be green. Just imagine that it just snowed and they're covered in snow, okay? Yeah, these are snow trees. That's what we're going to be hoping to sew. But first of all, I have to bring my take-up arm to the highest position. So I'm going to launch without any resistance or binding. And now we're going to try to generate some Christmas trees. I hope. Here we go! All right, I'm going to stop right there. Rotate my needle up. Always make sure your needle is clear of the material. And we've got some gorgeous, gorgeous little Christmas trees, don't we? Can you see that in the shot? I think you can kind of see it in the shot. Otherwise, I'm going to go up by the camera real quick and just kind of show you those. And again, they're going to be a lot better defined because we chose to go outside of the boundaries. We kind of colored outside of the lines, folks. We colored outside of the lines and made those Christmas trees tighter than they otherwise would have been. Aren't those gorgeous? Gorgeous, gorgeous Christmas trees. Yeah. So again, this is the stitch that we just did. Now we're going to be going on to the snaky one, and then I'm going to go to the yellow one, and then the blue one. But we have to set it up for red first, don't we? So let's do our 3 knobs in red. All right, here we go. If I turn it the wrong way, I just turned it the wrong way. So I'm going to try turning that clockwise. And now we're on red. We're already on red here, and I'm going to leave the stitch length setting exactly where we have it. And our rainbow covers red. So all we had to do is change 1 knob in order to generate the snaky pattern after doing the Christmas tree, right? All right, so let me get this material back in place. I got to clip my threads. And now we'll do our snaky pattern. And I realize there's probably a technical name for it, but oh well.
We don't have to be technical among friends, do we? All right, now the snaky pattern. Take up arms at the highest position. I'm going to change my camera angle because I think we're still focused on the knobs, and we are. And of course, with this Kona cotton that Paula was so kind to send to me, we're dealing with white thread on a white cotton. So once we zoom in on them, you'll be able to see them a lot better than you can right now. All right, so let's do now this snaky pattern, okay? All right, here we go. And I did not change my presser foot pressure, which is probably not the most prudent thing. Again, as you go to lighter materials like this cotton, hold on a second, I got to take this clamp off. I'm afraid the extension of that needle bar might hit it, and that would not be a good thing. So yeah, as you change material weights, you want to be making adjustments to that presser foot pressure ideally, and we didn't do that. So we're pushing down on it probably harder than we should. Thankfully, the machine is managing it incredibly well, and we're not getting any puckering. And if you can see it in the shot, that is absolutely, are you kidding me? Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. I'm gonna reach over, across, and grab the camera. Gorgeous, gorgeous pattern, isn't that? I love that pattern. I'll do a better job when I'm standing up. Right now I'm kind of reaching across to it. So this 2000 is just bang on when it comes to laying down quality stitching. Now I got to give some credit as well. It is the machine. It certainly is not the thread. Just being honest. It could be that the needle is also performing well, although I don't have a long track record with organ needles. But it's also this Kona cotton as well that Paula gave me. Kona cotton is some of the finest cotton that you can buy in the world. It's top shelf cotton, top shelf. All right, presser foot is back down. Put my clamps back on at least part way, and then I'll pull them off once we get our stitch line down. Okay, so now we're going to be doing, we've done the green stitch, the red stitch, now we're going to do the sunburst, as I call it. And again, the Husqvarna people probably are saying, this is not a sunburst. But you know, to me it is. It's kind of sunbursty. Yeah, it is. But look at these stitches. I'm just going to give you a preview of them. Gorgeous, gorgeous stitching. And we'll look at the lock stitch once we get done with all of our stitch offs. Beautiful, beautiful stitching. Okay, so now let's set ourselves up for the sunburst. Sunburst again is going to be that third stitch from the left that we're looking at right there. Requires a lot of intricate needle movement. A lot of intricate needle movement. So we'll set that up. I might step away for a second and put some more music on. Just bear with me for a sec. So I think I ran through all of the violin stuff. Now I'm going to put on trumpet and hope that it plays. And of course, the first trumpet song that comes up on my YouTube library of music is called Cooper Avenue. And it's the one that I sometimes will join in on my harmonica. Just giving you a fair warning. Fair warning. All right, just a little bit. Just indulge me a little bit. Can I play with frozen lips? That's the question. almost thought it'd be like putting your tongue on one of those posts when it's really cold outside. I thought my lips would like stick to the harmonica. Thank goodness that didn't happen. Thank goodness. Okay, so now we need to set it on yellow, right, for our sunburst. So I'm going to turn this one turn to the right, clockwise, get us on yellow. Now we have to adjust this for yellow. So I'm turning our stitch length all the way to yellow, which is shared also by blue. And I'm going to shorten it more outside of the range. You'll kind of see, you know what I'll do is can you see in the shot right now? Let me look at the shot. Yeah, you really can't see it. But I'll show you again that we kind of went outside. We colored outside of the lines and went shorter than they would necessarily recommend. So let me zoom on these. Again, we're going to do the sunburst, which is yellow. So we have all of our knobs set on yellow. Our stitch selector set on yellow. Our stitch length set on yellow, and you can see that I've taken it a little bit to the shorter end. This is where most people will probably set it right on here, right? But that doesn't give as much definition, especially to the sunburst, which is a gorgeous stitch. So I want to make it tighter, so I'm going to bring it all the way over to there. Could even go a little bit further. I'll be a real rebel and go right over to there. And then finally our last knob, which is stitch width down below, is also going to be on the yellow setting, which is our rainbow setting for stitch width. Covers a lot of the different stitches, other than maybe purple. I'm trying to think if it doesn't cover any of the other colors. Because again, if we had cam A, there's a purple stitch on there, so this would not work. We'd have to adjust it to the purple setting on the stitch width knob. So there you go. We're all set up. Yellow, yellow, yellow. And this again is the stitch we're going to be doing right there. One of the most intricate stitches that can be done on the Model 2000. And one of the most beautiful ones too, in my opinion. All right, let's go right about there, shall we? And see, this is the only thing I have to watch with my clamps. Where is it? There it is, right there. That's what I was trying to zero in on. See where you tighten the needle in? That swings down quite low, and these are pretty high profile, so I just have to be mindful of that so I don't end up, that needle clamp screw doesn't end up hitting one of my clamps that's holding the material in place. That would be a bad thing. Bad! Bad! Yeah. All right, let's give this a go. Let's make a sunburst. Let's make a sunburst. All right, here we go. Okay, I'm going to get right about to there. I'm going to hand turn this just to see if I'm clearing that clamp. See what I'm doing? I'm watching the edge of that clamp. I don't want to hit it. I think we're good. I think we're golden. So I'm going to take it real slow, but cautiously. And this is one of those tri-movement ones where it's using the feed dogs to manipulate that stitch. Now here I will have to take off this front clamp, otherwise the presser foot attachment's going to run right over it. So this one comes off, and we can finish this off confidently. Perfect. All right, beautiful. Oh, that is such a pretty pattern. Oh my gosh. That is such a gorgeous pattern. Just have one more pattern to do on Cam C. One more pattern. I'll give you a pre-glimpse of this sunburst that we just did. Orientate it correctly here. Do you see that in the shot? So we have the sunburst, we have the snaky pattern, we have the Christmas tree on the bottom. Some people on the bottom might call that an arrow stitch or something. You understand why people love the Model 2000 and the other Colormatic machines? Because it's so doggone easy to set the stitch pattern and you get a result like this. Absolutely drop dead gorgeous. We'll look at this in more detail No difference on the back. That's our lock stitch there. Lock stitch is equally fabulous. So let's do our final stitch on this Kona cotton that Paula Noel, my dear friend from Florida, sent to the workshop. And we're going to be doing the final stitch on Cam C, which is the floral stitch. It's the blue stitch, so we're going to have to set it to blue now. So we're going to be doing this stitch right there on the far right that you're looking at. The blue one on in the far right on the cluster of Cam C. I call it a floral pattern. If you have another name for any of these stitches, I love having my vision opened up to other possibilities as far as names. So either the green stitch, which I call a Christmas tree stitch, or an arrow stitch, the snaky pattern in red, the starburst in yellow, the blue one that I'm calling kind of a floral type pattern. If you have another name, type it in the chat, because this is all about us learning from each other. Sometimes the teacher, always a student. So give us a really cool name for any of those stitches that we either have sewn or the blue one that we're getting ready to sew. And you know what? I might start calling it your name. I might start calling it your name. Yeah. So we have to set these on blue now, right? Let's set these on blue. And it looks like our stitch length is already ready to rock and roll. We're already in the blue region, aren't we? Let's see. So our stitch selector has to go on blue. We're on yellow right now. Now we're on blue. We're already on blue here. I'm going to leave that alone. And we're already on blue here. So all we had to do is change one, just the stitch selector, to blue to do our final floral type stitch, right? We're going to do our final floral stitch now. Isn't it fun to look at those other stitches kind of in the shot as well? Those are just absolutely amazing, aren't they? Julie, you have an amazing machine. Julie, your mom got an amazing machine. She did. Absolutely fabulous. All right, so my music ran out again. That's okay. We're going to sew this last pattern on this Kona cotton with no music on. So if any of you were murmuring about, why can't we shut the music off? It just happened, not because I did it, but because YouTube, I don't know, maybe they wear like oversized shoes. Maybe they have orthopedic shoes that just don't fit them right, and they keep kicking the plug. The heck? Come on, guys. All right, so I'm going to put my clamp in front of it, and then I'll take it off as we get close to that needle bar clamp. I don't want to hit that inadvertently. All right, so our final stitch, the floral stitch. Take up arm at the highest position. Here we go. I got to adjust that one a little bit more. Take the clamp off. Taking it real slow because I don't want that. My presser foot pressure is too high right now, and I'm starting to get a pucker. Can you see that? I'm going to raise it anyway, even though it's going to break the pattern. I'm going to raise that a little bit to see if we can sneak past it. Yeah, I just totally goofed it up. That's okay. You'll still be able to see the pattern. Yeah, beautiful pattern, other than my not doing such a good job in keeping the material flat. Yeah, you'll be able to see it. Sort of. Yeah. It's an extra quilted effect. No cost. Free of charge. All right. So now we've sewn all of Cam C. All of Cam C. We've done the entire cam. And this machine, again, standard comes with cams A, B, C, and D. We're using Cam C, and I'm guessing that with this being an original owner machine, you know, it's been in the family forever. Julie's mom, Julie's granddaughter, the family has all the cams, no doubt. Pretty confident of that. Okay, so let me get this set up. We'll look at the top stitch first, then we'll go to the lock stitch. Once I can get this fancy Kona cotton to lay down. It's like doing its strut. Like, I want to be seen. I want to be seen. La, 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 la. Okay, so now I can quickly put my music back on. Baby. Let's look at these stitches, shall we? Yeah, you can see on the end there, just kind of ignore that right there where I had the Kona cotton kind of puckered a little bit. And that's my fault because I didn't adjust the presser foot pressure. But you'll be able to see beyond that where it was laying flat still. We had beautiful stitching. So let's look at these top 2 rows first. Christmas tree and snaky pattern. Solid page 34 plus. Beautiful, beautiful stitching. And this is a tiring organ needle too. But it's kind of fun to use a size 80 because we're going to get a little bit finer definition on this 100% cotton than we would with a 90-14. Beautiful stitching. Let's get on to the next rows. Now we're looking at the starburst and the crazy floral one. Ignore that on the end. That's kind of where I had the material puckering a little bit. But then it'll, right about there, it'll come back into form again nicely. Beautiful stitching. Sunburst really is cool, isn't it? I like that one. Let's look at totality of the stitching. Right about, I'll go to the right a little bit where I didn't goof up with the presser foot pressure being too high and kind of getting some bunching going on. Right about there is probably about bang on. So whether it's the one on the very top, the Christmas tree one, the snaky one, the sunburst one, or right on the bottom, the floral one, this model 2000 that belongs to Julie did just a phenomenal job of managing this sew off. Again, it's kind of a quilter's sewing path, isn't it? With the 100% Kona cotton, the quilt batting in the middle, and we're managing it in many areas with not clamping the material or not using a pin as Paula had it set up. And the machine handled it very well, even though I set us up for failure by not adjusting that presser foot pressure down. The presser foot pressure was too heavy for this material, and yet the machine, until the very end almost, managed it beautifully, like you can see right there. And then towards the end, it was just like, okay, I've been holding my breath here, buddy. I'm gonna let the air out, and it's gonna go out of whack a little bit. And that's your fault, Scott. Yeah, I agree. It was. So yeah, if you're sewing a ton of Kona cotton, you got to back off that presser foot pressure. Everything else just went spot on, didn't it? Absolutely gorgeous. So let's look at the lock stitching now. I'm going to come out here. I don't want to come out too far because it's kind of pretty to look at, isn't it? Let's flip it around and look at that lock stitch. So this is our lock stitch. 2 layers of Kona cotton with a quilt batting in the middle. We're going to see anything drastically different? No, I don't think so. We'll zoom in and look at these first, just like we did on the other side. Christmas tree and our squiggly one, our snaky one. Beautiful balance. Beautiful balance. Absolutely lovely. And again, we could even tighten these more, couldn't we? I'm seeing that on the lock stitch. We could even tighten them more than we did. So now let's look at the sunburst and the floral one. That's actually our good side because it's flipped around, right? We get to the end, you're going to see my
debacle again with the material feed because the pressure was too high. But the stitch quality is just absolutely spot on. And as I've said in a million different premieres, it's always, always, always easier to do a top stitch than a lock stitch. And actually the feed dogs manage the bottom quite well. We don't have nearly the feed factor issue down here that we did on the top. Aren't those gorgeous? But again, on any of these, we could even tighten them up more by adjusting that stitch length, couldn't we? Look at that fun quilting effect right there. Isn't that neat? So this is kind of our totality of the stitching right here once I take my hand off. So whether it's the Christmas tree on top, the snaky pattern, the sunburst, or the floral type pattern, this is exactly what we want to be seeing with our lock stitch. It's absolutely gorgeous. And this Model 2000 that belonged to Julie's mom, now to her, and also her granddaughter's using it as well, is managing these sew-offs like a textbook. Again, not a perfect stitch, but a near perfect stitch plus. Wow. Wow! Yes! Ha-ha! All right, let me throw that to the back as well. And we're going to move on to our next sew-off, because I don't have any other progress shots to show you. I've got some of this. What is this? Oh, this is vegetable tan leather. I had the idea that we would try doing some decorative sewing on 2 layers of it, but again, should I do that with a size 80 needle? That's a non-leather needle? Should I really try that? Isn't it kind of crazy, isn't it? Look at the thickness of this stuff. I'll kind of rotate it towards the camera a little bit so you can see. 2 layers of this stuff, really? It's a little scary. It's a little scary. It's kind of scary. Yeah, what the heck, we'll do it. If we break the needle, I'll just put another needle in. And it'll probably be a Schmetz. Size 90-14. Universal. Let's break a needle, yeah. No, let's not break a needle, because if we break a needle, it's probably going to scar the throat plate. And that isn't good. That's bad, bad, bad. Let me cut this down a little bit. I got way too big of a piece. See, that's actually a little bit bigger. That'll give me more room to play with. All right, I think I'll do probably do a straight stitch first, and then I might lay down one decorative pattern on here. But I'm going to adjust my upper tension up just slightly to take into account the thickness of the material. Because the lock stitch has to be created by pulling that thread all the way back up through those 2 layers of vegetable tan leather, it's a good idea to bump up that upper tension a little bit, so it's going to be pulling up a little bit harder. You know what I mean? So I just bumped it up from about 5 to about 6. Hopefully that's enough. Hopefully that's enough. So I'm going to change the knobs now back to a straight stitch. Let me show you how we do that. We could just launch right into a decorative, but I want to assess how this size 80 needle does before I get into a lot of needle swing. Right about there, I think. All right, stay right there. Stay. Don't move. Don't move. Don't move. Yeah, that's good. So the first thing we have to do is we have to tell it, hey, we're going to be doing a straight stitch now. So we go to our stitch selector and we turn the knob clockwise. Now we're on a 3-point zigzag. One more click. Just make sure. One more click. Now we're on straight stitch, zigzag, or buttonhole. So now we have to decide what length straight stitch do we want to do. Right now we're on 4. I think we'll probably do right around a 3. And then we have to take our stitch width and take it from the rainbow setting on 4 all the way back to 0. Otherwise we're not going to get a straight stitch. So I turn this all the way to 0. This I have on 3. This I have on straight stitch. So now we're going to try a straight stitch on 2 layers of vegetable tan leather. I'm a little bit nervous. It's only a size 80 needle, folks. It's not a leather needle. I'm going to take it really slow and easy. You know what? As a matter of fact, let's really be smart. and set the slow gear on. Let's do that. Pulling that out to engage the slow gear. Now I won't have to try to regulate the speed with the foot controller. I can do it using the slow gear. Folks, that's a lot of leather. That's a lot of leather. I am nervous a little bit. Size 80 needle. It's a lot of leather to go through for a size 80 needle. We're going to give it a go. Do our best. All right, here we go. Straight stitch, 2 layers of vegetable tan leather. Actually, I could use my clamps here. It's a good idea. All right, here we go. Really slow, really slow. This is making me nervous. I'm just being honest. See that? It hit that and it was like, are you kidding me? What? That might be biting off more than I should chew. Slow gear off so I can rotate the balance wheel. If you heard that click, that's the gears switching back to regular speed. Well, you know what? I'm impressed. That organ needle, yeah, okay. It managed it. It managed it. It paused a couple times, but that's probably because I didn't have my foot down hard enough on that foot controller. That just goes to show when it reduces the speed, you lose kinetic energy, right? So you have to really make sure that that foot controller with that slow gear is down far enough to give you enough oomph to get through, but it did a very good job of managing that. Now, I don't know if I should try needle swing on this. That's the only thing that makes me nervous. If I do, I'm going to make it a more narrow zigzag so that I've got a tolerance clearance on both edges of that throat plate. In case the needle fluxes a little bit, I'm not going to hit the edge of that throat plate. So the only change we have to make to do that is we need to make an adjustment on the stitch length and stitch width to give us a nice compressed zigzag. But you can see how it managed that leather. Again, a non-leather size 80 needle. No skip stitches. Through a lot of leather with a non-leather needle. That's very impressive. Very impressive. And I'll give credit to myself and the machine. How does that sound? Okay, so we're going to come out right about to there. And now we need to make a couple of adjustments because I want to be real careful. So we're going to make this even shorter than we would. We're on 3 right now. We're going to go down to about 2.5. Is that 2.5? I think so, yeah. Well, that's about 2 3/4 is what that is. Let's go with 2 3/4. And then I'll make my adjustment down here. No, I'm going to leave it. Yeah, I have to adjust it. I'm just totally, I'm nervous, you can tell. 2 3/4, now we're going to go 2 3/4 also on stitch width. 2 1/4, 2.5, 2 3/4, right about there. So 2 3/4, 2 3/4 on stitch length, stitch width, and we've got that set on there as well. So now we're going to try to lay down what I call a compressed zigzag. It's not going to be nearly as wide as it could be. You can kind of see where we set our settings here. 2 3/4 on stitch width, 2 3/4 on stitch length, and then we have this set on that universal setting right there for straight, zigzag, and buttonhole. All right, let's go down to the needle. Keep your fingers and toes crossed. We're narrow enough that we shouldn't, even if the needle breaks, we shouldn't scar the throat plate because it's going to be going right down the center of it. All right, I'm going to give it a little bit more gas this time. I kind of babied it too much the last time, and we kind of stalled out a couple of times, and I don't want to do that. Get our clamps back on. All right, let's give this a go. Here we go. Come on, buddy, we can do it. Oh, we were going to launch regular speed. I didn't even have the slow gear on. Let me try that again. Here we go. This might be too much, guys. Got some momentum going now. This is very nerve-wracking.
Oh my gosh. That is not the power of the machine, folks. That is the thickness of the leather. All right, slow gear off. Let me rotate that balance wheel. Press your foot up. Incredible how it just managed that so off. Jumping catfish. All right, so I'm going to sew that so that you don't doubt the power of the machine. I'm going to sew that one more time without the slow gear. Probably should just stop while I'm ahead, but you know me. And I had the foot controller almost all the way down for that last sew off. I'm going to take these clamps off since I'm not going to have the benefit of slowing the machine down this time. Get that take apart all the way up. Again, this is making me nervous because this needle is so, it's lighter. It's a lot lighter. All right, let's give it our best. Here we go. We break the needle, right? Here we go. So that also proves another point, doesn't it? The other point that I just proved by what I showed there is everyone argues, hey, if you're going to do super heavy duty, if you're going to do multiple layers of vegetable tan leather, put it on the slow gear, you'll be able to mow through it easily. You lose speed momentum when you're going through that, and you don't have a leather needle, so sometimes the slow gear will help you in gearing it down, slowing you down so you have better traction, almost like driving on winter roads. You don't want to spin the tires because then you lose control, right? But sometimes you need that momentum, depending on the needle and the setup you have, to get through that more effectively. I wasn't pedal to the metal, but I gave it enough gas that we just glided through those 2 layers of vegetable tan leather, not using the slow gear on the second sew off. So it dispels the myth that the slow gear is going to give you more power. Sometimes it takes away your power by reducing your kinetic energy, right? Yeah. And with that, I'm just going to rock a little bit. Rock with me, would you? Come on, baby. Yeah. Dig it deep. Dig it deep, 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 dig it deep. Plus it warms me up a little bit since it's so cold down here. Yeah. Feeling. My hands look red, they are. If you do this near the needle, just don't have your foot anywhere near the foot controller. Well, that helped a little bit. I feel like I warmed up at least an 1/8 of a degree, maybe. Beautiful, beautiful stitching. I'll give you kind of a preview of it. It's going to be hard to see against this vegetable tan leather because it's so light. But we've got absolutely gorgeous stitching. Our slow gear row, our full speed row, I should say, and then our straight stitch row as well. Beautiful stitching. Well, I'm not gonna push this size 80 non-leather sewing needle by Oregon any further. It's done a brilliant job. Let's take a look at this stitching. Let's take a look at this stitching. So straight stitch first, top row. We're going to kind of be looking at that zigzag that we did with the slow gear just below it. And remember how many times when we were doing that sew off of the zigzag in the second row, how many times we kind of hit that leather and the machine just stopped. And it wasn't the machine failing in any way. We didn't have enough kinetic energy getting through there because, again, you take the machine from full speed down to 1/5, and you're still dealing with exactly the same motor or engine, 1 amp. So the slow gear is not always the right choice, is it? A great lesson to learn, isn't it? Let's go across and look at these.
But even with those stop points where there wasn't enough momentum to get through, we still finished off with gorgeous, gorgeous page 34 plus stitching. And not a single skipped stitch using this organ size 80 needle. Not a single skip stitch, which could easily happen sewing with a lower grade thread and going through this much leather. Very impressed. Beautiful, beautiful. Let's get on to that one that we did without the slow gear. We'll look at those two side by side. Beautiful, beautiful stitching. Beautiful stitching. This kind of music we should be showing off right now. This is German music. Beautiful stitching. Totality of the stitching come out to right about there maybe. From the straight stitch to the zigzag in the middle that we did with the slow gear, to the zigzag that we laid down with no hesitation at all as that size 80 non-leather sewing needle by Oregon was going through all this thickness of leather, ridiculous thickness, 2 layers of vegetable tan leather. All of the stitching is absolutely as it should be. Page 34 plus, very impressed. Let's flip it around and look at the lock stitch. But I'm gonna tilt to the camera real quick, the thickness, assuming I have these edges lined up so we can see the thickness of them. Right over here you can see it. Probably about 6 ounces of leather. Vegetable tan leather is usually a little bit thinner than say cowhide or protected full grain leather, but we still have about 6 ounces of leather, right? So I'm gonna turn it around. We're gonna look at that lock stitch now. And see what we think of the lock stitch. Again, the lock stitch is always gonna be tougher on the machine. It's always gonna be tougher to generate. Always tougher. So we'll look at the first 2 rows first like we did on the other side. So I'm seeing something, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but I'm gonna see if it's the same on the bottom. Not as much. Interesting, interesting. What do you see in the shot right now that you can type into the chat showing how astute you are as a student and how observant you are? Look at the 2 stitch rows that we can see right now in the shot. The straight stitch, the zigzag that we used the slow gear on in the second row there. I'm gonna get a drink of water while you're looking at that. So what I'm seeing is no worries about the straight stitch. It looks fine. But when we incorporated the needle swing, taking away the benefits of the kinetic energy of the machine being able to plug through the leather at full speed without being retarded by the slow gear, we've got a little bit of a tension issue cropping up. You see that on the zigzag? Right at the center point where the stitches are coming together, we've got a little bit of the knot showing. Now we're talking about a lot of leather here, folks, but because we didn't have the benefit of the energy and we had taken away the speed factor, and it was strictly that 1 amp motor trying to plow through this, and we stalled multiple times. We stalled, we hit the top of that leather and the needle just stopped. Like, no way, man. So we had to kind of plug through it, didn't we? And as a result, we had a little bit of a tension imbalance that you probably won't see as much on the bottom row that we'll look at next, where we had that speed factor of that needle going right through it with a little bit more momentum, less stalling. Let's go across and look at it and see what we see. All in all, really quite good, but a little bit of an imbalance. There it is too. So it goes to show you that kinetic energy, momentum. When you're talking about this much leather, let me take my hand off. Look at that leather right there. We thought that the genuine elk hide was thick, right? We looked at that and go, oh my gosh, it's like a man's or a woman's biker's belt. This is even thicker than that single layer of elk hide that we sewed. Look at it with your own eyes. I'm gonna move it a little bit. Look at it with your own eyes. We just went through, I said 6 ounces. I'm wrong. I am wrong. It's about 8 ounces of 2 layers of vegetable tan leather. And my buddy Dusty from Colorado, that does all kinds of work with vegetable tan leather, has done work for Alice Cooper, has done work for Johnny Depp. He'll be the first one to tell you that, you know what? Going through vegetable tan leather, even a single layer, it's not easy peasy. And we just went through 2 layers of vegetable tan leather using the slow gear, which is not gonna increase the power, and it couldn't have been evidenced any more clearly in that sew-off by us hitting that leather on a number of occasions using the slow gear, and it stalled out. It would not pierce through those 2 layers. It didn't have enough kinetic energy. And there was no increase in power using the slow gear, so it was at a loss. It was like, how do I do this? How do I do this? So that's where we run into a problem when you don't have that kinetic factor, where it throws the stitch balance out of whack. There's not enough momentum to pull that thread all the way back up through those 2 layers of vegetable tan leather that you can see right there. So that's it. That's an instance where all those advocates that are always, you know, I always say in the classroom, we try to stay accurate. We try to stay spot on. But in the other forums, Facebook sewing groups and other places like that, there's a lot of misinformation being distributed about the slow gear on the Vikings increases the power. Not true. You just saw that evidence right there as we stalled out over and over and over again, and the stitch tension balance is off a little bit. We don't have enough of, we didn't have the momentum, so we didn't have enough force for that needle to pull that thread all the way back through those 2 layers. And as a result, we can see the knot kind of peeking through, saying, hey, look at me. But when we took that slow gear away, we go down to this bottom row. I don't think that imbalance is going to be as evident. I might be wrong. I think I might be right. Look at right there on the middle row with that slow gear, where you can clearly see that needle, that knot peeking through. Our initial launch with that slow gear disengaged on that bottom row, we're starting to come back into form on the stitch tension balance, aren't we? Let's go across and look all the way. Balanced. Little bit of an imbalance, but clearly a lot better in balance than that middle row. You see that? Kinetics, speed, momentum plays a factor, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. We still got page 34 stitching on both rows, but boy, did we battle that middle row with that slow gear, didn't we? Especially right there. Look at the difference right there. Not sticking through, peeking at us in that middle row. Not the case on the bottom row where we didn't have the slow gear engaged. Isn't it great to learn new things? Isn't it fun? Isn't it great to be able to dispel myths? Yeah. Totality of the stitching, I'm really pleased with all 3 rows. The straight stitch on the top row, the zigzag that we used the slow gear on, and then finally the zigzag on the bottom that we took the slow gear out of the equation and just managed our speed using the foot controller. All page 34 stitching, even maybe page 34 plus. But it's a lesson learned, isn't it? Don't believe everything you read on the internet about why did Husqvarna engineer the slow gear with a gear reduction, taking us from full speed down to 1/5. It was about control. It was not about increasing power, and we saw that evidenced here on this premiere today. Yeah, we did. Big time. Big time! Yeah, baby! So I left a little bit extra room there if Julie or her granddaughter want to try stitching, hopefully using a Schmetz needle instead of the organ needle, just for the factor of it not fluxing too much. and scarring the throat plate, I think that'd be a good move. I think that'd be a totally good move. And also when you get to this level of sewing, again, look at the level of sewing that we went through. It is a very wise thing. Number one, have that take-up arm at the highest position, like I've said 10 billion times, but also giving it a hand start. I would absolutely give it a hand start. That means as you're engaging that foot controller, you're also having your hand on here, and you're rotating that balance wheel in conjunction with the motor engagement towards you slightly to get that machine rolling through that leather, and then you'll be setting yourself up for success, right? Yeah. Cool, right? Isn't it cool? I love learning. I'm a student too. Yeah, I am. Yeah. Oh, you want to come out just to evidence that point? Really? Come on. We got to... Okay, all right. We'll do it. Doggone it. Jiminy crickets, Jiminy yay. There we go. Reminding us that we're sometimes a teacher, but we're always a student. I don't like going to those sewing channels where they act like they have all the answers. Do you? Do you like that? I hope you don't. I hope you're like, no, I love this channel because we all can teach each other, can't we? Yeah, we can. We all can teach each other. So I'm going to throw this leather, these 2 layers of vegetable tan leather, which is, it's ridiculous we did what we just did, but we did. We'll throw it to the back with our other sew-offs. And now we're going to sew a little bit of bubblegum material, and then we're going to call it a game over. I'm not going to use this other cone of cotton. I'm going to save that for another sew-off. So our student is going to, I'm going to put her right over here. I'll put her out a little bit so I don't knock her over. That would be rude. So now I'm going to sew every stitch that we have on this bubblegum material. My nose is actually running, it's so cold in here. Not to be gross, sorry. I gotta grab a tissue. You know what we need to develop, just for the workshop? Someone wants to develop some really lightweight gloves. And I know that, you know, it's kind of like the, we sometimes will show in movies the homeless people and they cut off the tips of the gloves and they just have the glove covering their hand. That would help. But wouldn't it be great to have a cold weather sewing glove that I could wear? I could put on cold weather sewing gloves and I could sew and be able to manage things very well and do all what I need to do without getting my hands as cold as they are. Take a look at them. You see? Yeah, they're not pink and rosy. They're like, oh, it's like 50 degrees in here, man. Oh, blah, 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 blah. All right, so now we're going to sew bubblegum material. And I'll try to do all the stitches that the machine can do. Every single stitch. Matter of fact, let me come out on the shot just a little bit, incorporate the needle as well, and we'll kind of, that way we can go through them a little bit more expeditiously. Right about there. And then we'll look at them together. And bubblegum material tends to be very stretchy if you've never seen me demonstrate it before. See that? That's why I call it bubblegum material. It's stretching. And hopefully I can fit all the stitches on this when I fold it over like that. And I probably will incorporate the clamps too. Yeah. You can't see her, but this little student is like doing her dance over here. All right, so we're going to do a straight stitch first, right? I've got to take our stitch width all the way down to 0. And I think we'll do probably like a 3. Yeah, we'll do like around a 3. We're already, excuse me, we're already on the stitch selector on the multi-setting that gives us a straight stitch, a zigzag, or a buttonhole, right? So we're going to do that next. We're going to go ahead and do a straight stitch down. I think that almost made sense. Almost. Take up arms at the highest position. You can see that. Almost. There we go. All right, straight stitch first, and we'll do the other stitches after that. Here we go. All right, so that's our straight stitch. We go through all of these, all of these. Now we're going to do a zigzag. These are really awkward. I'm going to take these off for right now, which I'll probably end up regretting, but that's okay. Okay, so now to do a zigzag, we don't change our stitch controller over here, our stitch pattern controller. Leave that right there. This we can leave right there. All I have to do is change this one so that we can get a zigzag. Otherwise, we'll end up with another straight stitch. So I'm going to set this zigzag, 3, 3, zigzag. All right, let's do this next one. Here we go. Oh, take up arm first. All right, here we go. Beautiful, beautiful. And again, this is very stretchy material. It's got, in all likelihood, it has a combination of polyester, vinyl, God knows what they have in here, along with some Bubblicious. And it's real tricky stuff to sew. I think I sent a sample of this to Emma and to Sunny. I don't know if I sent a sample to Paula or not, or to Roz. I might have. Okay, so we did a straight, we did a zigzag. I should look at my tensions real quick, shouldn't I? We're looking okay. We're looking okay. I might just bump it up just a hair. So right now we're on right around 6.5. I'm going to go up just a little bit higher on this bubblegum material. Okay, so now the next stitch we're going to do is going to be the 3-point zigzag. So what I have to do is I have to turn this stitch control knob one turn counterclockwise to our 3-point zigzag. And now I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller. I'm going to go from 3 down to 2.5. Bring this down to 2.5. So stitch width 2.5, stitch length 2.5, and our 3-point zigzag on this bubblegum material now, okay? Take up arm at the highest position, we're good to go. All right, let's launch into this one. Here we go. Really holding the machine back, it wants to race. So there's our 3-point zigzag right there. And you probably can't see it because we're way out. I get it. We'll look at these afterwards. So what do you think? Yeah, they are gorgeous, aren't they? I agree. I agree. Okay, so we've done all of the basic stitches that are part of that multi-setting on the stitch control knob. So now we're going to be launching into the stitches for cam generation. So we're going to start, we could do them in the opposite order if you want. We can do the blue one, which is the floral one, then the sunburst, then the snaky one, and then the Christmas tree. We'll do them backwards from the last time. So I've got to go with blue first if that's the case. I'm going to turn this one click so our control knob is on blue. Now I have to adjust our stitch length in the blue region, although I'll probably go a little bit shorter to make it a little bit tighter. And then last but not least, we have to set our stitch width on blue also, which is our rainbow setting. Take up arm at the highest position. So now we're going to be doing our floral type stitch. Here we go. You can see it's manipulating the material with the feed dogs. It's a tri-action type stitch, or a tri-motion stitch. Outstanding. All right, I'm going to bring that around. Beautiful, beautiful stitching. All right, so now we're going to be going on to our sunburst next. Sorry about that, I just bumped you. And I think this organ needle really is doing an excellent job so far, don't you? So if you were already an organ needle proponent,
You're probably saying, "Ha ha! See? Aha!" Well, we're not done yet, so don't clap for yourself yet, buddy. Don't clap for yourself yet. All right, so now we're going to do yellow. So we turn our stitch controller one click counterclockwise to yellow. We're already on yellow here, yellow blue, so we're going to leave that alone. We're good to go here as well, so we're not going to change that. Yeah. I love Latino music, don't you? All right. So we're doing our sunburst now. Here we go. La 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 la. Come on. Hey! Yeah. Musica. Oh, musica, that's right. I said musica, like, yeah, I did it wrong. You guys sing, I'm just gonna cut over here. Yeah. Dun, dun. Dun. Yeah. All right, so we did our sunburst. Now we have to do the snaky one, so we have to turn this one click counterclockwise to red, and we have to turn this to red in the red range. There we go. And this is already on red, so we're good to go. All right, so now we're doing our snaky one. Our snaky one. Take up arm at the highest position. There we go. Let's launch. Now. So that was our red stitch, our snaky pattern. Folks, these are just wait until you see them up close. You know what, I'm not going to make you wait. We have one more to do. We got to do the Christmas tree one, but I got to show these to you. At least the top stitch. And then we'll look at the lock stitch. You got to see these. You got to see them. You got to see them. What? Yeah, it's kind of crooked there. That's just that the material's not laying flat. But aren't they lovely? Aren't they? What? Yes. Lovely. Lovely. All right, let's lock it right there. We have one more stitch to do. One more stitch to do. All right, our final stitch, the Christmas tree one, or whatever you want to call it. And then I'm going to leave a little bit of space to the right of here where Julie or her granddaughter has a chance to stitch on this bubblegum material too. That would be kind of fun, right? Okay, so now we need to make our settings for our final stitch on Cam C, the Christmas tree one. So we've got to go green. We've got to go green. It's like a slogan, right? We got to go green. So I'm turning this one click counterclockwise so we can go green. We're already green here. We're already green there. So we're ready to rock and roll. Just get our take-up arm to the highest position, and we're going to be making some Christmas trees. Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. Here we go.
All right, stop right there. I've been so impressed that my music is still playing that I want to stop it for this final sew-off. I'm even going to do something incredibly courageous and daring and shut my heater off, too. All right. So, almost complete silence in the workshop. Just listen to Julie's machine run. It is silky. Here we go. That is a very smooth machine. Very happy machine. What was that? Oh, our friend over here, our student, fellow student, said, I think that qualifies for graduation. Yeah, they are gorgeous, aren't they? And that's on bubblegum material. Y'all have to appreciate how tricky this material is, especially when you incorporate needle swing. It's an incredibly tricky material to sew. It really is. All right, I'm going to set this up over here. We'll look at our, yep, that's right. We'll look at our top stitch and then we'll look at our lock stitch. And I'm going to have to use my clamps to hold it because it's kind of curling back. Hold on a second. There we go. Perfect. I might as well put the other clamp on so it's like balanced. Okay. And I got to put my music back on because it is like, oh, and my heater. Ah! Hold on. All right, let me check our lineup. And again, even though I went outside of the boundaries, I kind of colored outside of the lines, as they say, and I went shorter than the preset setting where the two colors are on the knob. I could have gone even smaller as far as stitch length and tightened these up even more. And I would encourage Julie and her granddaughter, or anyone else that has a Colormatic series machine, whether it's a 2000 or one of the other versions, don't be afraid to push the boundaries when you've got the discretion to do it, because you can really get some sharp looking stitches when you do it. And we certainly did, but I could even, it's the Kanai thing. We could have gone further. So here's our Christmas tree, our snaky pattern. Kind of go across, you can see those. This is our top stitch. Beautiful, beautiful stitching. Good, on to our next stitches, our sunburst and our floral one. And again, these patterns are going to have a tri-motion quality, which means it's not just needle movement, it's also feed dog manipulation to generate stitches like this. Folks, those are gorgeous, aren't they? Then finally, dropping down, we're going to look at our, what is it, our 3-point zigzag on top. In the middle, we've got our zigzag, and then we've got our straight stitch. The last 3 stitches. And certainly you could put other cams in this machine and generate additional stitches, but with what our setup is right now with Cam C, we sewed every stitch that this Model 2000 can do. And laid down page 34 plus stitching. Totality of the stitching will come right about, it's kind of fun, that Christmas tree row up there. I kind of like went whoop, up and down. Folks, I don't know what you can see, I know some of you, like my, some of my friends will watch this on big screen TVs, which is really, I've never imagined myself on a big screen TV, but that's kind of fun. Like Thalia does that. Thalia sent me a still shot of one of the premieres, and there I was on the big screen. It's like, whoa! I want some movie rights. I want to have a limo. You know, I want the biggest trailer. Isn't that some of the stuff they talk about? Yeah, it is. It is. Well, just look at those stitches real quick when I go over and flip some more music on. That's absolutely brag-worthy. Absolutely brag-worthy. Really, really gorgeous stitching. I changed. When the ash settles. When the ashes settle. So, this is again a machine that Julie could certainly testify to was not sewing like this when it came to the workshop, and for a variety of reasons. And now this is just one very happy machine, and I'm so excited to get it back to Julie so she and her granddaughter can enjoy it, can celebrate the genius of Julie's mom in getting this machine brand new, because it really is a fabulous machine. Let's look at that lock stitch. I'll have to disconnect our two little clamps first so I can flip it around. Take a look at our lock stitch right there. All right, I think I got that pretty even, pretty straight. So again, bubblegum material, very tricky stuff. Holy mackerel, I didn't even know it was lined up like that. It's lined up perfect. How skillful am I? It was good luck there, buddy. So yeah, I mean, we're looking at the totality of stitching right now, and it's absolutely artwork. It's like artwork, isn't it? It's truly spectacular. And this is only, again, one of the cams. You know, the machine's so much better than YouTube plays music. Jiminy Crickets, guys, come on, help me out here. I'm bringing this to a dramatic conclusion. Can you give me something? Throw me a bone. Throw me a bone, doggone it. Yeah, that's a bone. Exactly. So spectacular stitching, and imagine when you incorporate cams A, B, and D, the basic cams that would have come with this machine, you could fill this bubblegum up material with another, what, 12 stitches, right? 12 more stitches on top of what you're seeing right now with those other cams coming into play. Gorgeous, gorgeous stitching. Let's zoom in and look at these a little bit closer. Top two rows, Christmas tree, snaky pattern. Amazing, amazing. Starburst, along with our floral pattern. Finally, our 3-point zigzag, our zigzag, and our straight stitch. You know how hard it is to stand still with music like this playing? I am totally wanting to break loose, do my thing, but then the camera would be doing this. Yeah, that would be horrible. That would be horrible! Nice song, you guys, nice song. So number one, just gorgeous straight stitching, right? So many of you are driven by straight stitching, which I totally get. If you're a quilter, you love straight stitching. You just do. Hands off there, Scott. There we go. So gorgeous straight stitching, and the cam generated stitches are great. The built-in stitches are fantastic. You know, this is what it should look like, folks. And this is what I call affectionately the Sewing Olympics. And this sounds like an Olympic song, doesn't it? Yes! Gold medal! I'm on the podium, baby. I'm on the podium. Yeah. How do you can't improve on this. I don't know how you can. Honestly. I could use better thread, yeah. Yeah. But apart from that, I mean, the machine is just, what a machine! Yeah! All right, I want louder music. In honor of Julie's amazing Husqvarna Model 2000 Majesty in Sewing. Yeah, baby. Yeah. All right, y'all take care. Thank you so much for joining for this premiere. Wow, that's like, we had Majesty music and now we have like, when are the clowns gonna come in? Well, that's okay. I'm the clown. Yeah, I'll come in and dance. Why not? Okay. No, I'm gonna go back to the light again. We'll open this away. We'll close this the way we opened it. Yeah, that one there. Yeah. Oh, come on, don't end it there. I'm not ready yet. Give me something else. Come on, guys. Yes! My Opa song! Come on, Magna, don't fail me now. Don't fail me now. You come out here too, my dear. Oh, we just took out the girl. Sorry. Sorry, guys. Oh, boy. We're tipping everything. We're tipping. Here, you stand over by her because you're taller. Sorry about that. I took out one of our friends. Do you have any crickets? So again, just to kind of summarize things, we did... Let me check my shot. Yeah, you can kind of see it, sort of. We did all of those cool decorative stitches that I just showed you, right? Fabulous decorative stitches. We did precision sewing with this protected full grain leather. We sewed 100% genuine elk hide right there. We sewed this Kona cotton with the quilt batting in the middle that Paula Noel sent me and laid down gorgeous stitching. And then finally we went through this outrageous 2 layers of vegetable tan leather, about 6 to 8 ounces of leather, and laid down all kinds of beautiful stitching on that as well. And proved that the slow gear does not add power, but it actually takes away kinetic energy, and without the momentum, you can't get through certain materials. Yeah. So with that, yeah. Light my friends up a little bit here. There they are. Yeah. All right, off the tripod for this final shot here. Off the tripod. I gotta come off the tripod. I haven't come off the tripod hardly at all. Not even hardly at all. Hey guys. Yeah. Wait, you're kind of turned the wrong way. It looks like you're cross-eyed. There we go. Hey, look at you. You're so serious and scary, borderline. Yeah. So this is Julie's Husqvarna model. I'm gonna hold this. Yeah, good. Model 2000. Fabulous machine. And again, you saw what we sewed. I'll shut that off. We did. No, I'll turn it back on. Yeah, let's turn it back on. We went through all of this. Aren't those lovely? Those are lovely. Yeah, they are. And we did all this. Look at this stuff over here. You can't really see it. It's too dark. Who shut off the lights? That was me. Hold on. There we go. Let's do that. Everything's falling. Everything's falling. Help me. Help me. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, whoa. Wow. Very, very nice. Very nice. All right. Well, I think this is a graduation worth celebrating. Yeah. There we go. Now you can actually see the machine. All right, back up on the tripod now. We'll let this song kind of roll out. Folks can finish chatting among themselves. We can celebrate another successful premiere brought to a conclusion. I'll turn one more light on at least. Yeah, that's better. All right, watch for other premieres and live streams. Enjoy the wrap up to this song. You want to dance? Dance. You want to dance with your pets? Dance with your pets. You need to run to the restroom? I totally understand. All right, well, take care, everybody. And congratulations, Julie. Your third generation Model 2000 is heading home. Enjoy. Enjoy. God bless you guys. Take care. Yeah, I know I agree, Dr. Singer, it's mind-blowing. And I know you knew Isaac Singer personally, right? But the fact that they didn't come on the scene until 1851 and 1620, the King of Sweden had made that decree of the drilling and grinding plant kind of originating in Husqvarna, the company, almost like more than 200 years before Isaac ever came on the scene. So yeah, I mean, you have reason to be proud, Dr. Singer, but 1620 versus 1851? I mean, really? Come on. I'm not even good at math and I can do those numbers. All because of King Gustavus II Adolphus. Well, pretty rockin' dude, yeah. We could have hung out. Yeah, could have done that. Yeah. All right, I better check messages. Nope. I've got it. Yeah. Okay. Bye, everybody.